food at Big Willie's. Hopefully, some of you went and spent your New Year's Eve hanging out, enjoying the vibe, and watched some games. Today is a very, very strange day for Utah football fans because what you're seeing is the breaking up of a family. The court proceedings are pretty much ironed out. The custody agreements are mostly in place. And this thing that you've relied upon, and sometimes you loved it, sometimes you hated it, but you knew it was there for 21 years in some form or another, is now that era has come to an end, and it feels a lot more official now that, the 2025 season is all the way in the books. What a great way to end it, by the way, for a Utah football team that now has 11 wins for the 2025 season. Devin Dampier, who we're still awaiting news on, closing out his season in style with an incredible performance in the Vegas Bowl. And potentially, as much as I hate to say it, potentially closing out his Utah football career in style with that kind of performance in the Vegas Bowl. Yeah, college football playoff games, we'll get to some of those. But what we thought was going to happen with this Utah coaching staff, this, again, family, all of us go to Rice Eccles Stadium in the moment of loudness, family on three, firework, 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 family. We all believe it. We all buy it. We all got sucked into it, and the family's broken up. Now, it doesn't have to be a terrible thing. It doesn't. Hopefully, you can find some sort of redeeming situation here with Morgan Scalley, who I will say it every time I have an opportunity. Morgan Scalley is the right dude. The way that the team responded to him for that bowl game, I think, was evidence of that. The emotion that he showed, the gratitude that he feels to be the head coach of Utah football, it means something. What it doesn't mean is that this is going to be smooth and easy, but I am confident that Morgan Scalley is the right guy, and he's going to have Utah football where it needs to be, I think, sooner than later. I don't really begrudge Kyle Whittingham too much what's going on because there are plenty of factors at play here. I know that there are a lot of people out there. I'm paying attention to social media like most of you are. There are a lot of Utah fans that they've just written off Kyle. They've written off Coach Witt. I don't root for any success at Michigan. I don't want to see you succeed there. I don't want to see you finish out your career in good fashion. I hope you burn the way that you burned down this program. I'm not looking at it that way. I understand why you are. I understand how painful this is for some people. I understand how uncertain this future is. Kyle Whittingham, and if you have not been living under a rock, you know this. Kyle Whittingham is hiring Jason Beck to be his offensive coordinator, Micah Simon to be the wide receivers coach, Jim Harding to be the offensive line coach. The whole offensive staff, minus Mark Atuaya, is going to Ann Arbor. The defensive staff remains, as far as we can tell so far, mostly intact with the exception of, and this one is incredibly costly, Lewis Powell, your defensive ends coach, and probably the best recruiter on your staff, is following Kyle to Michigan. That one hurts. Do I begrudge Lewis Powell? No, I do not. Zero. There had been a push. There had been even a thought that Lewis was going to stay. I was told that Morgan Scalley offered him the associate head coach position, which is, that resume builder. Shows you the next guy in terms of overall authority. If anything ever happens where you get suspended or whether you have an illness or something like that, heaven forbid, the associate head coach is the effective interim, right? If you get fired, the associate head coach is usually the interim. Lewis Powell, I was told, was offered a very attractive package financially to stay, and that title, as meaningless as the title is, I guess, to stay. And ultimately he elected to go to Ann Arbor. And again, I just don't know how you pretend it's anything other than, well, you got to because it's Michigan football. This is the winningest program in the history of college football. First program to 1,000 wins, still the winningest program with, I think, what Ohio State is next with like 20 fewer wins.
Ohio State's behind, I think, about 30 wins.
That's Martin, by the way, filling in for James. Martin, excited to do another show with you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He's wearing the Notre Dame Fighting Irish cap. The Irish are third, by the way, in all-time wins, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they are.
But Michigan is that top of the mountain in terms of history, and that still has an appeal to it. Now, there's a negative for Kyle Whittingham, for Jason Beck, for Lewis Powell. All of these guys now, the pressure cooker of Division I football is intense enough. The pressure cooker of blue blood college football is something that I'm probably a jackass for even pretending I can articulate it because I never had to live it, but we can observe, we can watch. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, previous to cheating his way into a national championship, as a Michigan man, as a guy who played at the school, as like the homecoming king, they were ready to run him out of town if he didn't take a pay cut. He had to take a pay cut. He had to cut his salary in half previous to the Connor Stallions' resurgence. You know how nuts that is?
It was a big pay cut, too.
Yeah, I mean, they literally were just like, we will pay you half of what we're paying you right now. Yep. If you're not going to beat Ohio State and you're not going to have us in the, at the time, 14 playoff, then we need to have a different conversation about what we are paying you. And he was like, all right, don't get rid of me. I got a plan. Now, we found out what that plan was. Great documentaries have been made about what that plan was and how successful it was. But guess what? Even with that, what you're taking over if you're Kyle Whittingham and what you're going to if you're Jason Beck and Lewis Powell and Jay Hill from BYU, by the way.
Yep.
What you're going to is the winningest program in college football history who has won a national championship in the last 5 years.
Yes, they have.
You're going to a place that signed, even in a bad year, this was unequivocally a bad Michigan football year, signed, what was it, 6 4-star recruits and 2 5-star recruits in a down year?
Yeah. With
a coaching staff that was already going to be in flux even before the Sharon Moore situation. So, again, I don't begrudge these guys. I'm with you, and I will sympathize with you, and I will pat you on the back. If you feel like, no, I hate these dudes now, that's your right as a fan, okay? That's what fan experiences are. I mean, I saw the level of cope that was going on with a lot of BYU fans. What is Jay Hill doing? This is a lateral move. It's not. I wish we could say that it was.
$3 million is a lot of money not to say no to.
The money is appealing, obviously. It's not even the money that comes to you that makes this such an elevated attempt for these coaches. It's not even your own personal salary, which is obviously a huge deal.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It is the fact that you now there's not a single recruit on the landscape that you can't go make either their top offer or a very, very appealing offer to.
That's really true.
At the University of Utah, always, this staff was doing more with less. And it's something that we should all remain proud of. And it's something that we should expect from Morgan Scalley and his staff. Do more with less. Do more with less. Whoa. What are you talking about less? We got this private equity money coming in. Just trust me. Do more with less. Make that your mantra. Make that your work ethic. And you will succeed. And they will succeed. If Kyle Whittingham and his staff do that, have that mentality at Michigan, hey, let's do more with less, but they don't actually have less. You know how dangerous that can be?
Yeah, it is. Hey, that's top notch right there.
So I don't begrudge any of these guys leaving. The painful part of this divorce and this family breaking up is you've got a lot of kids now, right, that are old enough to decide whether they want to go with mom or dad. Who are you going to live with? And I pray that I never have to experience something like this. I know people who've been through this where
it's not fun. I can tell you that.
Their kids are old enough and they got to decide. The court is going to say one thing, but from a practical standpoint, you got to decide, do you want to go? Do you want to be with mom or dad? I've seen it. with some of my closest friends, people who I consider to be family, and it's when the kids choose, I'm going to go with mom for a while, I have watched that rip the guts out of dad.
It goes beyond the court, man. It goes way past that. Believe me, I've been there, done that. It was not fun.
And I don't even mean to bring that analogy into play here. I don't want to get overly emotional for people and trigger anybody, but now you've got on transfer portal day, the transfer portal opening today, this morning, officially.
Yeah.
You already had some announcements that you were just like, oh man, what, John Henry? You're gonna go live with mom? No, don't do that. Now Smith Snowden's in the transfer portal.
Yep.
Now we don't know. I mean, you have 2 weeks. You don't have to announce your intentions today.
Right.
But you're going to see throughout the day, throughout the show today, I'm going to try to stay on top of it. Martin's going to help me. And we're just going to keep refreshing and seeing, wait, who? Who's going into the portal? And I put some poll questions up last night to kind of figure it out, to kind of help out. Our getting a pulse on what your priorities are. And I stayed with the young players for obvious reason, because if you're a part of this coaching staff and you're Morgan Scalley and you're trying to kind of put things together, you've got to figure out if it's possible for you to retain the young guys on your roster. The seniors with 1 year, the rising seniors, 1 year of eligibility left. I mean, I love Smith Snowden. I think he's an incredible player.
Yeah.
He told us on the air, to my face actually, I'm a Ute for life. I hope it's true. I desperately hope it's true. I don't know if it is. But you can't make too many decisions if you're Morgan Scalley based on retaining 1 year service.
Yeah.
Even though everyone's a free agent every single year, what you got to do is you got to figure out, all right, these guys that just signed with us, these dudes that just had great bowl performances as freshmen, these dudes that were a part of an offense or a part of a defensive game plan as young players, can I retain them? Can I keep them?
Yeah.
You can answer that if you want to, Martin. The thing is, Utah football is in a state of flux right now, and figuring out where you can find the constants is one of the most important things Morgan Scalley can do. And obviously his coaching staff, retaining Luther Ellis, who we haven't heard any announcements about, retaining Sharif Shaw, retaining Colton Swan. Those things matter. They will matter more if those individuals are also saying, hey, not only is Luther Ellis staying, but Pupu Sepulona is staying, and Carson Kalfusi is staying, and Cash Dillon is staying. And all those guys are going to have an agent, and all those agents are going to say, hey, what's the deal here? We don't know. And we won't know all the way for a couple of weeks how the roster in its semifinality is going to shake out. This is a very, very strange time for Utah football. All right. So Teo's in the transfer portal. I'm just going to say, Teo, we wish you well. I have a different feeling about that than I do about Smith Snowden. I think most of you probably do. I'm not in the business of trashing people on their way out the door.
No.
I'm not in the business of being overly excited about people who haven't played somewhere else showing up. Again, John Henry Daly, I wish him well. Smith Snowden, I wish him well if he ends up leaving. Remember, by the way, that a foray into the transfer portal does not mean what it used to mean. A foray into the transfer portal could just be testing the market and finding out, hey, nobody values me as much as Morgan Scalley values me.
Isaac Wilson did it last year.
Isaac Wilson did it last year. Mekhi Bernard did it a couple years ago. Remember that?
Yep.
Do we remember that Mekhi Bernard, before the 2024 football season, which was disastrous in a lot of ways, he was in the transfer portal And he came back, and imagine if he hadn't, how much worse that season could have been.
Yeah, especially in the running back room.
So, look, today is a very uncertain day, and tomorrow is going to be the same, and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're going to be telling you where some of these people land, and we're going to be getting news. I don't think it's going to be good news on Devin Dampier. I want to be optimistic.
Yeah.
I want to be like crimson goggles. Why would he go anywhere else, especially after the season that he had? Well, because his coach, the guy that he's attached to, the reason why he felt loyal to Utah this year is now off to Michigan.
Yep.
And I think it's pretty obvious that Lewis Powell's going to give John Henry Daly an opportunity at Michigan. He's got Big Ten defensive end written all over him, like I said last week. Or earlier this week, I guess. Hard to keep the day straight. I think that's pretty obvious. That one makes sense. I don't know how obvious and sensical it is for Devin Dampier to follow Jason Beck to Michigan when they've got this massive financial commitment to Bryce Underwood.
Correct.
When they have this massive fan base that is already either married to Bryce or there's a small faction of them that are just like, no, bring in somebody else. But if you bring in somebody else, this is the Michigan quarterback position, right? Is that person, is Devin Dampier going to be enough, right? Because he's a 5'10", dual-threat quarterback who was really good this year. At his best, he was incredibly efficient. He still, when healthy, is an incredibly dynamic player. I mean, look no further than his performance in the Vegas Bowl. The dude can play. He can flat-out play. But is it considered, and this is what we do all the time, a right fit at Michigan? If it's me, if I'm Jason Beck, I'm like, look, man, I can't guarantee that you're going to be starting over this kid. I want you to go watch his film. If I'm Jason Beck, I'm having this conversation with Devin Dampier and his agent. I'm saying, look, you're probably not going to make any more money at Michigan than you do at Utah, because you were paid to be the starter at Utah. I can't guarantee you're going to be paid the starter money at Michigan. Devin, I want you to go watch Bryce Underwood's film. I want you to go see what this kid is capable of and tell me if you think you're going to beat him out in the spring. We will give you an opportunity to do that. And let Devin Dampier, with his 1 year of eligibility left, make a decision based on that. I think that the announcement when it comes for Devin Dampier is kind of anywhere but Michigan. It's Utah, maybe Arizona State, maybe Texas Tech, but I don't think it's Michigan. I don't think.
No.
I don't have any special insight there, but I'm kind of doubting that he follows this coaching staff to Michigan, which again is that weird family breakup dynamic because what you had before was the big brother putting his arm around you, Jason Beck, saying, like, where I go, you go, kid. We're going to ride this thing out together. And he may very well feel that same way now and be campaigning with Kyle Whittingham, be like, I don't care if it's a fit at Michigan. He's a fit in my offense. We protect him and we keep him healthy, and look what he can do for us. He produced 11 wins at the University of Utah. Well, I guess he produced 10 of them because Bird Ficklin quarterbacked one of those.
Right.
He's a 10-win guy. And you said it yourself, Coach Witt, in your press conference, 10 wins gets you into the playoff if you're at Michigan. And he's absolutely right.
But here's the thing while you keep going off of that. Devin's in a situation where he has to play now because
Correct.
The NFL draft is coming up, and he can't sit behind Bryce and have a fun season at Michigan. He needs to play now to produce tape so that he may be able to get into those late rounds and see if he can get picked up.
There's not a person out there who thinks Devin Dampier is going anywhere where he expects to be a backup, which is why the Michigan connection sort of evaporates. Exactly. Regardless of who your quarterback or your quarterback's coach is, because Coy Detmer Jr. is following also.
Yeah.
Right? Which is another loss for Utah.
Detmer was a good coach.
He's a good coach. He's a guy that I think, it would be a big leap forward. He's a guy that I think if you wanted to run this same offense, and there's no guarantee that that's what Morgan's looking for, if you wanted to run the same offense that we've seen and you wanted to say, hey, It's got to be Devin Dampier for me if you're Morgan. Then Coy Detmer, trying to retain him, elevate him to a co-coordinator position at least, might be a thing. But that brings us to the other situation we're dealing with here. Who's going to be your offensive coordinator at the University of Utah?
That's a good question.
This has been the question that is like the bane of existence for Utah football fans. So start thinking. We talked about it last week, but start thinking about the real possibilities. Aaron Roderick, there's a lot of smoke around Aaron Roderick's name. Jonathan Smith, the former Oregon State head coach, former Michigan State head coach, there's a lot of smoke around his name right now, and apparently he's in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
As we speak. Probably interviewing for this job.
Probably.
I said it on the – I had, no joke, 4 different people call me last night with the exact same question. Hey, what's going on? Seeing after the dust had settled, how many coaches were following Kyle Whittingham? People were like, hey, are we going to be all right? Hey, what's going on here? The answer to the first part of that question, are we going to be all right? Yes. Utah football is going to be all right under Morgan Scalley. I do believe it's going to take time. But something that you should, as a fan, you should, as a supporter of this team, what you should be able to, I think, expect, everything that I've been able to deduce is that Kyle Whittingham was less popular in the booster rooms, so to speak, than is probably ideal for a coach of his stature. His comments about wearing out his welcome, he was making those comments for a reason. He was understanding some of the sentiment being directed toward him. So let's just entertain the possibility that there are powerful people on the Hill who have deep pockets and generous checkbooks who had started to feel like maybe they were questioning how much they wanted to support a Kyle Whittingham coach team, right? No question about whether or not they're still all in on the University of Utah. We're talking about families with their names on the sides of buildings. We're talking about families with their names on scholarship funds, things like that, right? Entertaining the possibility that maybe some of those families were just like, I don't know, man, Coach Witt doesn't really do it for me anymore. Well, we should expect and infer that if that were the case, and it seems like maybe it was, that those people now, there's not that obstacle to their support. If that were the case, right? Like, Martin, if you were a big ESPN 700 booster and you were just like, you know who I really can't get behind is this OC cat. I just can't do it. He just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I still love ESPN 700.
Right.
But that guy specifically, it's just, I don't like his communication style. I don't like the way that he talks to me at events. I don't like the fact that he won't, kiss the ring, so to speak, because we're the ones paying for some of these NIL contracts. Whatever it is, if there's something about me that rubs you the wrong way, and because of that, our boss Jackie comes in and is just like, hey, man, we love what you've done for us, OC, but it's time, all right? James has been behind the glass for a long time. It's time for James to sit in that chair. Now you, Martin, might be like, all right, the obstacle to my support is gone. The obstacle to my, not even support, because the support has always been there. The obstacle to my enthusiasm or my buy-in, my complete buy-in is gone. Yeah. Well then, okay, fine. Now I can expect your full buy-in.
Yeah.
Now I can expect your full enthusiasm. Now if you were reticent to be like, yeah, I'll do, you know what, blank check for Kyle Whittingham. I can't do that for Kyle Whittingham. Well, you better damn well do it for Morgan Scalley if you're going to expect him to have any kind of the same level of success, because he's new to the gig, and so he needs to be set up for success. He needs to be put in a situation where, as he's conducting offensive coordinator interviews this week, he doesn't get outbid on the guy that he wants. He doesn't get pushed back from the table because he's like, I'm sorry, I can't offer you that particular thing.
Right.
Where our people are not going to get you a house here like the Alabama people are.
If we're saying Utah is trying to throw money at a new spot, the OC spot, to try to fix what just happened, you brought up Aaron Roderick, with throwing in more money to Aaron Roderick, also attract Bear Bachmeier. If you're going to lose Devin Dampier and possibly lose him to Michigan, and Bert Ficklin might be looking at this saying, you know what, I love Utah, but there's a better opportunity for me to start. Wouldn't it just be a fun way to stick it to Cougar fans and say, hey, we took your OC and quarterback?
I'm not even entertaining that possibility because I think it's too far-fetched.
Okay.
But I would love it so much. And not just because of the fact that it would bother BYU fans, but because I think Bear Bachmeier
is talented.
Yeah. And people don't like this comparison because of what happened in the pros. Bear Bachmeier's closest analog in college football is Tim Tebow.
It is.
Like, he doesn't have the prettiest throws. He doesn't have the most beautiful arm talent, but he is an absolute load. He's a tank of a human being. He's impossible to bring down. He's got this kind of like insane leadership ability that's hard to put your finger on as a true freshman. And so if I'm going to get even like a poor man's Tim Tebow out of this thing, not the NFL version Tim Tebow, the college version Tim Tebow. Yeah. Tim Tebow was one of the best college football players we have ever seen. If I'm getting even the poor man's version of that, please bring Aaron Roderick here. But again, we don't know behind the scenes what Morgan Scalley knows. Morgan might not be sweating it at all because he's like, man, Devin's gone, but I got Bird Ficklin. Bird loves me. I love Bird.
Yeah.
And Bird has given me like, hey, just hire an offensive coordinator that's going to let me throw the ball, which Morgan Scalley has already said he wants to do. That's where the Jonathan Smith thing is a little bit interesting to me. Because Jonathan Smith at Oregon State
was good.
Well, he was a great coach.
Yes.
But his offenses were never air-it-out style offenses. The one he played for was.
Yeah.
His offenses when he was the head coach at Oregon State looked a lot like Utah offenses. Really good offensive line play. Every single year they had a running back that was incredible. Sometimes they had two. And all of us would just be like, man, who's their quarterback? And it would never be a good answer. It would never be somebody that really, really impressed you. And they sometimes had great wide receiver talent and sometimes didn't. Who does that sound like? That's the problem that Utah football has had for 20 years now. If there was something that you wanted to criticize about Utah football consistently, it was what Michigan fans were sweating about when they made the announcement that Kyle Whittingham was the guy. How many tweets did you see, Martin, from Ohio State fans gloating or from Michigan fans worrying like, hey, this guy hasn't had a quarterback drafted in 20 years?
That's true, but he's never had a quarterback, and he's still not ready yet. He's a very fun prospect to watch. He's never had a quarterback like Bryce Underwood. He's never had a kid with that much talent.
Correct.
And if he can tap into even half of that talent and get his arm strength up to where he can throw the ball down the field, Bryce Underwood might be the best quarterback Coach Witt has ever had, period.
And here's the other funny thing about it, people. Kyle Whittingham should not touch that quarterback.
No.
Kyle Whittingham should leave the quarterbacks the bleep alone. Because Kyle Whittingham doesn't actually know much about the intricacies of quarterback play. That's not where his bread was buttered for any of his career.
He knows how to stop him.
So he knows how to stop him. He knows about leadership. That's if you want Kyle Whittingham to meddle in your quarterback room, that's what you're asking Kyle to do. If Coach Witt has learned anything over the 20-plus years of his head coaching career at the University of Utah, it's that sometimes he's got to give the keys to that to somebody else. And I think that's why he was more successful with Andy Ludwig. I think it's why he was more successful this year with Jason Beck, because I think he finally realized, you know what? When I keep my hands off of this mess, when I tell the quarterback how impressive he is, how much I love him, how he's leader number one, how he's the alpha on this team, that's a good thing. When I say anything else to the quarterback, it doesn't go well.
So let me ask you this: with flipping it back to Utah and about Morgan Scalley, how should Morgan be with his transfer portal? Should he be aggressive? Should he be going after some names? Should he be, besides just coordinating positions like quarterback, running back, wide receiver, defensive end, cornerback? Like, there's a few positions on this team that they got to fill in for next year's roster.
So what Morgan should be doing, and this is what he talked about when he was with the media. He wants to be himself, not just be Kyle Whittingham, right? Well, for years and years, especially these last 5 or so years, Kyle Whittingham has pulled back his influence little by little, right? And he has let the talent evaluation, the talent identification be more in the hands of his assistant coaches. And he has let the development of those talents be more in the hands of his assistant coaches. Now, he's not hands off,
Right.
but he has let Morgan Scalley decide who the starting players in his Morgan Scalley now defense are, right? He has let Morgan Scalley be the guy who says, like, this is who I want to recruit to play this particular position. And you know who was helping him in those efforts? Sharif Shaw, Colton Swan, Luther Ellis, and unfortunately a really, really good Lewis Powell, who knows who you're going to lose to Michigan because Lewis Powell is gone. I mean, that by itself is a devastating loss, and I put a Twitter poll question up about it at Real OC Sports. The non-coordinator loss that hurts this coaching staff more, Jim Harding or Lewis Powell? Let me know what you think. Cast your votes. Morgan, when it comes to his level of aggression in the transfer portal, should be leaning on the stuff that he has done for a decade now. Don't be like, well, I'm the head coach now, so I gotta swing for the fences. Handle it the same way you have handled it. Handle it the way that Utah football has handled it for even before we called the transfer portal the transfer portal. One of the best defensive players that has ever come through the University of Utah didn't have the measurables to make him that level of successful in the NFL. Gianni Paul. Remember when Gianni Paul played in this defense, Gibo? Gianni Paul transferred from Miami before the transfer portal was a thing. Had to get the waiver, had to do all that, right? Gianni Paul he had the connection was through Dennis Erickson, but Gianni Paul was identified and developed by the Morgan Scalley defense and ended up being he should have been the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, the year that DeForest Buckner won it. If Utah had won that Oregon game, it would have been Gibo who got Defensive Player of the Year in the conference. Do that. Be that guy, the guy that you always were. As soon as you start being like, all right, you know what? I'm the head coach now. I got to get Faletau Satawala to come to Utah, and I'm going to pay him $2 million to do it or whatever. Maybe you get him. Maybe that's possible for you. Maybe you get him. But now you're out of character. You're outside of your own box. You're overly aggressive. You've committed too many resources to one particular player. Morgan Scalley, this is part of the Kyle Whittingham model that Morgan Scalley should follow, where the transfer portal has always been a net positive for the University of Utah. Even this last year, where you lost the guy who was going to be a defensive captain in Keanu Tanavasa. Do it the way that you have done it. This is one of those things that you don't tweak and you don't change because it has worked so well. All right, we got to take a break. With one of the looming questions about who the offensive coordinator for Utah football is going to be moving forward, I went through and I looked at the numbers for the most likely candidates. All right? And there's one thing, when you look at over the course of their careers, one thing that becomes painfully obvious about every one of these candidates. I'll tell you what that is next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you by Big Willie's on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, I'll take you behind the scenes a little bit here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I'm doing my prep last night as I'm watching college football playoff action, Ole Miss in Georgia. All right, I'm sitting there, laptop on my lap, my dog continually putting his paw on the keyboard of my laptop, me getting all mad at him. Get out, stop it.
He's got a big paw, too.
He's got a huge paw. His paw's as big as my hand. Like, knock it off, back it up, right? I'm doing that, and I'm like, okay, what kind of genius approach am I going to take to get people's minds off of the discouragement they're feeling over the fact that Jason Beck is gone and Lewis Powell is gone and Smith Snowden might be gone and John Henry Daly's likely gone? I was like, all right, let's talk about the offensive coordinator candidates that we're looking at here. Jonathan Smith is out there. Aaron Roderick is out there.
Yeah.
We're watching right now the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, Rice and Texas State. Texas State's offensive coordinator, this Copel guy, is putting up big numbers at Texas State.
He was a candidate for Oklahoma State.
It's not a dissimilar situation to what you got with Jason Beck last year. Now, he doesn't come as a package deal with a great dual-threat quarterback the same way. But Texas State's offensive numbers, even though they're a 6-6 team, they're a top 15 offense in the country in a points per game type of situation.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at all of these guys, right? And I'm saying, okay, let me go back to when Jonathan Smith wasn't a head coach. He's just a play caller. Those great years under Chris Peterson at the University of Washington, right? Let me see, like, where did those offenses rank? Well, the first 2 years he was a coordinator under Chris Peterson, their offenses ranked in like the 60s nationally. That's not something you're going to get excited about as a Utah football fan. And then the final 2 years he was coordinating that offense, they jumped up to like top 15 and then top 10 in scoring offense. I was like, oh, look at that. Do we believe that that's because Jonathan Smith magically figured out something in 2015 or 2016 and 17 that he didn't know in 2014 and 15? Would that be the reason for that, Martin? That Jonathan Smith just magically, he like met a wizard in a subway station and the guy was just like, hey, this is what you've been doing wrong. Here's how you improve it. Is that what happened?
I don't know, because we brought it up in the last segment. Jonathan Smith's numbers at Oregon State were pretty good. He had DJ Ogalele with him, and he was okay. It wasn't, it wasn't pretty, but they weren't terrible. But the progression at Michigan State he fell off a cliff. I'm not understanding. And he took his own guys with him to Michigan State too, and they had a decent team. But in games, they were outbeaten offensively.
Let me tell you why it happened. Okay? Thank you for making that point, because it's going to support the point that I'm going to make. This is the grand revelation that is the most obvious thing in the world, but as we're trying to weigh on these, like, oh, what does he do? What are his numbers? What do the stats say about how good he is? Aaron Roderick is a great, great example of this, right?
Yeah.
Utah fans are hearing Aaron Roderick's name, and they're just like, I don't know, man. You're bringing A-Rod back? Because A-Rod's numbers at the University of Utah as an offensive caller, as an offensive play caller, not incredibly sexy. You know what I mean? And then you look at since he's gone to BYU. All right, well, which years has he had good offensive numbers? Well, this year with Bear Bachmeier, he had some pretty good. That's a top 25-ish, top 30-ish offense. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. What about last year? More like a top 40. Okay. What about that magical 2020 season during the COVID? Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
They're like the number 3 offense in the country. Okay? And then you extend it further down and you look at the Texas State guy right now. And here's what the thing is, right? With every coach at every position, and especially with these offensive play callers, you know what makes their numbers good? You know why Jason Beck had such an unbelievable season as an offensive play caller at the University of Utah? And before that, he had really respectable seasons at New Mexico. But you know why they were great at the University of Utah? You know why he is at Michigan right now? It's not because, all respect to Jason Beck, because I think he's good at the job. But do you know why he's at Michigan right now?
I do not.
It's because of the players in that offense.
Okay.
Look at what happened with Jonathan Smith when he was coordinating Washington offenses under Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson, by the way, who could call the damn plays himself if he wanted to.
Yep.
You know why 14 and 15 were kind of bad years, and then 16 and 17 they jumped up into the top 15, top 10? You know why? Because all of a sudden he had a quarterback, and he had Dante Pettis, and he had the Gaffney kid running the ball. He had all of these dudes that could play. He had individuals executing the offense, the play calls that, of course, have to come from him and have to come from his scheme and have to come from his playbook. But the thing that makes these offensive coordinators excel is not their genius, not their independent genius. It is the players. We can't overthink this. It does not matter who you hire as an offensive coordinator if you don't have good players. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
At this level, now, at Texas State, you can kind of hide it with scheme because you don't have great players. You have players who are relatively better than the competition in the Sun Belt Conference or whatever, but you don't have truly great players. You just don't. All of a sudden, you look really, really good when you have really, really good players. It's why the Matt Wells thing, I love Matt Wells. I've talked to Matt Wells. We've interviewed Matt Wells plenty of times. Matt Wells' name has kind of been floated. It's why I don't want it to be Matt Wells. Because Matt Wells had some really, really good players. And he didn't have good numbers.
It's true.
The thing that makes these offensive coordinators look like geniuses, including Jason Beck, who, again, I believe is really good at the job and I think is a loss for the University of Utah. Do you know why is Jason Beck the reason that the University of Utah had the number 1 yards per carry in the rush game nationally? Is Jason Beck the reason that they had the number 2 overall rushing offense in the country? Is it Jason Beck who's the reason for that?
No, because that offensive line was built before Beck got there.
If Jason Beck had an offensive line that was 4th best in the Big 12 Conference, which I think is kind of where BYU's offensive line was at, Jason Beck doesn't have the number 1 rushing offense in the country.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't. And that's not an insult to Jason Beck. It's just you look at the numbers that these offensive coordinators are able to put up, and you'll see in like the same guy in his same career will have a year where he's like, wow, how come you were the 70th ranked scoring offense this year and you were the 15th ranked scoring offense the next year? Yeah. And the answer is the players. And quite frankly, it's usually the quarterback. So, here's what's going to happen, folks. We're going to get an announcement on who the offensive coordinator is at the University of Utah. And whether it's Jonathan Smith or it's Aaron Roderick or it's this Texas State guy or it's Eric Kerr deciding to forego his head coaching opportunity at Weber State and come and coordinate the Utah offense instead, the announcement that you really have to care about is who is that guy's quarterback.
Yeah.
And then after you get those 2 boxes checked, then the question is, all right, Morgan Scalley said he wants to throw the ball all over the yard. Who's going to be the wide receivers? A question as old as time for Utah football.
Who's going to be the wide receiver?
Who's going to catch the passes from, let's say Bird Ficklin likes the deal he's got from the University of Utah, loves Morgan Scalley, and is just like, I'm staying, man. This is great. Devin Dampier's not going to be here. My guy's going somewhere else. I don't want to go compete with Bryce Underwood. I'm going to stay at the University of Utah because I immediately would be the starter. And there would not be one person who would argue that. I want to start this year. Okay, it's going to be at the University of Utah. Wonderful. The offensive coordinator is important, but it's a lot less important than that. And if it's not going to be Bird and Aaron Roderick is going to be the coordinator, you better bring Bear Bachmeier with you, because then I'm not stressing. I'm not. I'm like, oh, cool. It's going to work.
Yeah.
Whatever we're trying to figure out here is far more likely to work. It's the players, man. Jonathan Smith, highly respected coach. And by the way, probably the nicest man in the coaching business. But Jonathan Smith, the same thing with him as with every other coordinator in the country. His numbers have been great when he has a great quarterback and he has above average players at other positions. When he doesn't, his numbers have been kind of like,
Yeah.
The players are the thing. And Morgan Scalley knows that. And Morgan Scalley is probably panicking a little bit and not sleeping a lot because he knows that. Because today is transfer portal day. And Morgan Scalley, defensive-minded coach, is losing guys even from his defense. So his offensive acumen is probably making him sweat like crazy. Right. He doesn't have a coordinator named right now. These guys, these defensive players know who they will be playing for on the defensive side of the ball. Smith Snowden is entering the transfer portal knowing full well who's going to be calling the defense at Utah next year. Teo Johnson, same thing. John Henry Daly, same thing. They know, even though the announcement hasn't been made official yet, and I'll let that happen before I tell you who it's going to be, these guys know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
And they're still getting into the transfer portal. So for Morgan, he's probably just like, oh man, what are these offensive guys going to do? Because they don't have any idea. You got to have an answer for them quick. If you think you can keep Bert Ficklin, you better be able to tell Bert Ficklin in the next 3 days who his coach is going to be.
Yeah.
So he can make an informed decision on his future.
And Michigan just did exactly what you said. They made the decisions pretty quickly. And Kyle Whittingham didn't play around when he probably told Bryce Underwood, hey, I'm bringing my OC in. We're going to have fun. Let's do this.
Kyle Whittingham met with Bryce Underwood before he met with the university president. He did.
Yeah.
He got the job.
Wow.
He got the job, and the first thing he did was talk to Bryce Underwood. And what did he say? He said, kid's got the it factor. He's impressed with Bryce Underwood, which, again, colors the decisions that are made all down the line. I know I just stated something that is incredibly obvious, but I have watched the discourse, I have listened to the discourse, and everyone is looking for an offensive coordinator who by himself is the magic elixir. And as much as Jason Beck was able to do for Utah this year, he wasn't that. He was an amazing, amazing play caller in most situations, but the reason Utah had the offense that they had this year is far more dependent on the players than it was on Jason Beck. You know how you can tell? Because where did Utah excel offensively? Was it in the passing game, Martin?
No.
Why not? If Jason Beck is a genius play caller, why didn't they have a great passing offense? He should be able to scheme his way into as much yardage as he wants. If he is the genius that we're all so devastated about losing.
And he brought 2 wide receivers over from New Mexico, too, with him.
And by the way, Ryan Davis, the New Mexico guy, was your best wide receiver.
He was.
That should not be the case at a Big 12 school, at any Power 4 school, that the New Mexico kid, the undersized New Mexico kid, should not be your best wide receiver. We all love Britton Covey. There's no reason why a 5'8" Timpview white kid should be the best wide receiver on your team. It's not supposed to be that way in college football. We all watched, even in a losing effort for Ohio State, they have a 6'4", 230-pound android playing wide receiver for them.
Mm-hmm.
You can throw the ball anywhere in the same zip code as Jeremiah Smith, and he is going to win the battle, and he's going to come down with it. That's what the ideal is. That's what you're going to be chasing at Michigan. At Utah, you got to have something between Ryan Davis and there. And I love Ryan Davis.
Yeah.
Like,
good kid.
Great player.
Yeah.
Under-recruited.
Yeah.
Clearly was good enough to play in the Big 12. Should have been at a Big 12 level right out of high school. Yeah. Coaches get it wrong all the time, Martin. You know this.
Yep.
But good golly, we're expecting Morgan Scalley to save everything by hiring the right offensive coordinator, and it has a lot less to do with that than hiring the right general manager, than hiring the right recruiting coordinator, and making sure you have the good players in your program that you need. Retaining a Bert Ficklin, bringing a whoever this year's Devin Dampier is, bring him in, and all of a sudden that offensive coordinator, whether it's Jonathan Smith or Matt Wells or Aaron Roderick or Martin, is going to look like a genius.
When you bring up Jonathan Smith, I can't help but think, could Jonathan Smith be sitting in that meeting trying to pitch, hey, I can find us top 30 recruits. I could find us the 4-star players that are underappreciated. Like, could he be trying to say, listen, I could probably convince Brandon Moresby to come to Utah. I could probably convince maybe some former Michigan State good players to come to Utah. Like, do you think that's part of his pitch? Because Aaron Roderick's probably telling him in a meeting, like, hey, I could try to get Barry Bachmeier. I could probably try to get JoJo Phillips, but I don't know if I can guarantee that.
This is where it gets difficult for me because if you're Morgan Scalley and Jonathan Smith tells you that, I'm looking at him and going like, why should I believe that? You never hit on your quarterback at Oregon State. Who's the best guy that played quarterback for him?
DJ. And he was the one out of Clemson who couldn't fill in Trevor Lawrence's shoes.
He was a bounce back. That's like, and he wasn't great, by the way.
No, he wasn't, because he went to Florida State and stunk it up right after that season at Oregon State.
If I'm Morgan, I'm looking at him and just being like, no, man. Like, the Sean Marion kid was pretty good.
Yeah. Childs was the one that went with him to Michigan State.
Right.
And Childs just didn't develop in anything at Michigan State, and now he's in the transfer portal.
I mean, you look at it, you have to have like a discerning mind with all these things. If honestly, you know what? I love Aaron Roderick. If Aaron Roderick can bring Bear Bachmeier, hire him. If it's not going to be that combination, get the dude at Texas State who's scoring offenses right now is like seventh in the country.
And take another underappreciated OC and elevate him. Like, we just did it with Jason Beck. You just went off on it for 5 minutes.
And by the way, Jason Beck deserves a lot of the credit that he's getting, and he deserves this Michigan opportunity.
He does.
Because what he did is he maximized what was given to him, and that's something that a lot of coaches are not willing to do. They're not willing to adjust their offensive scheme, and he even told us this. My playbook is really kind of dependent on what we have, and that clearly is the case at the University of Utah. He had dual-threat quarterbacks. He had a guy he knew well in Devin Dampier, that he knew exactly the throws that Devin could be expected to make and the ones that he's not even going to try because my guy is a great quarterback, doesn't have that level of arm talent. We're going to use his legs instead. And he did a pretty good job of adjusting even when Devin's legs were not all that healthy, right? So he gets a lot of credit for all those things. But the players are what make offensive coordinators look good. They just are. Go back, find any offensive coordinator that you think is a great genius. Chip Kelly, Oregon. You know why his offenses look so good? Because he had the fastest dudes on the planet playing out at those perimeter positions.
Michael James.
And he was just like, oh, all I have to do is scheme up a way to get the ball to you where now you're in space.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Morgan Scalley is going to have a lot of time on his hands to fix this and to try to put it in a way where it's giving him time to rebuild a program, especially with the coaches and the players. Utah's not going to fire him after just a season. But how long do you think that leash is for Scalley to put this program back to where it has to be?
4 years.
4 years.
Because it probably was 2.5 or 3 if Kyle Whittingham is retiring.
Okay.
And Kyle Whittingham rides off into the sunset and there's like maybe 2 coaches that you got to change. Like, let's say Kyle Whittingham had retired instead of going to Michigan and poaching everybody, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jim Harding is probably still like, all right, I've had a Notre Dame offer before. I don't get along all that well with Morgan anyway, whatever the case is. I'm going to go see if there's other possibilities out there for me. It doesn't mean he's going to stay.
Yeah.
Right? These coaches, because really good coaches, it happens. It's one of the benefits and the curses of having great assistant coaches. They get other opportunities. Kalani Sitake is feeling this right now. He's like, man, I've had one of the best defensive coordinators in the country for the last few years. That's an amazing thing. Now he gone.
Yeah.
Now I got to figure out how to replace that. It's the blessing and the curse of the whole thing. So let's say Morgan Scalley is taking over for a retiring Kyle Whittingham, and maybe he loses Harding. Maybe he loses Lewis Powell.
Yeah.
You're probably not losing Freddie and Lewis Powell and Coy Detmer Jr. and Jason Beck. You're not losing everyone at once, right? Well, if this athletic department and the people making decisions in it, if your athletic director, Mark Harlan, is as smart as I think he is, he's looking at that and going, this job just got a hell of a lot harder for Morgan, and that means I need to be a little bit more patient. And the boosters that wanted Morgan to move into this spot, you better be patient. You better look at it and realize the situation that we have all collectively put him in. So I think he's got a longer leash. I'm holding a leash right now, by the way, because my dog's in here. He's got a longer leash than people probably think.
You think he makes a bowl game season 1?
Ask me that when we know who the coordinator is and who the quarterback is.
Okay, I'll mark that down.
I mean, that's the real question.
Yeah.
If I'll say this. If Bird Ficklin is staying to be the quarterback, then my answer is yes.
Okay.
If he's in the transfer portal tomorrow and we don't know what his future holds, I'm going to say no.
Well, I like that.
I can't come off a rant about how the players are the thing that really matter and then say, yeah, he'll definitely make it regardless of who the players are. It's the players. It's the players. I promise you it's the players. Go look at the stats. It is the players. All right. In fact, we got to double our breaks here. Sammy Moore is going to join us to talk about all this mess with Utah football next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome in our good friend Sammy Mora, Utah insider, and someone who's probably dealing with a lot of mess right now. The managing editor of Ute Zone has a lot of stuff to sift through and follow at this exact moment. As the transfer portal opens today, Utah's season officially in the books after a big win in the Vegas Bowl, and reorganization of the coaching staff happening as we speak. Sammy Mora, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm as good as you possibly think I could be, OC. How are you?
Doing great. Happy New Year to you. Are you a New Year's resolutions or a goals type of gal?
Depends on the situation, depends on what's going on. Considering that I have been glued to my phone for the last 7 days, I haven't had a single chance to think about what I want to do differently in 2026.
That's totally fine. We'll check back with that when you have a moment to breathe. Let's start with the fun stuff. Let's start with the Vegas Bowl, where Utah, even as they knew that their coaching staff was probably going to look different, even as they knew that the special era of this particular group of seniors was coming to an end, they put together a dominant performance against a Nebraska team that showed up for like a quarter and a half, looked like they were ready to fight. What did you think of the Vegas Bowl, especially given the context?
I was honestly, like you said, the context of it is, have to kind of look at it through a certain lens right now. But, I was really impressed. That Utah team could have come out and laid the biggest egg possible, considering everything that was going on around the program from, beginning of December until when the game started. But I was really impressed. I know Utah fans were a little worried during the first quarter. Nebraska kind of was punching there for a little bit, and then, I think Utah just needed to settle in. There were some adjustments that were made, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and Utah just, did what Utah needed to do to overpower them. I think I heading into that game, I knew that Utah was probably going to be in a position that they could overpower Nebraska, like if you look from a roster standpoint, but, them actually doing it, and like them doing it hypothetically and doing it in real life is very different, especially given everything that was floating around. But, for Devin Dampier to throw for over 300 yards, which was his season high, that should tell you something. And I'm just impressed on how the team handled themselves with everything that was going on in the last week.
310 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, 148 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Devin Dampier's best game as a Ute. Was it his last game as a Ute?
Honestly, OC, I have no clue. That's the thing, is like, until we have a clearer picture of what this staff is going to look like, I have no idea. And I don't want to speak on if a kid's going to stay or not, because we've known time and time again, we can hear one thing that a kid is staying, and then 2 minutes later they're in the portal. So until the portal is closed, I have no idea who's going to be on this team and who's not going to be on this team.
Fair enough. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you can't really give an informed answer on a lot of that until you know what the coaching staff is going to look like, really at any position. Quarterback is the most important position, but it's true everywhere. So Kyle Whittingham takes Freddie, as we would expect, Jim Harding, Lewis Powell, Micah Simon, Jason Beck. Were you surprised by any of those things?
I think the biggest one that I was surprised by was Lewis Powell, because even yesterday morning I had heard from multiple sources that Lewis was intent on staying at Utah, and then all of a sudden now he's wearing Michigan blue. So I think that one's probably the most surprising. I think that everyone kind of could see that Beck was leaving, and when Beck goes, that means Detmer and Simon are going to go with him. Harding, he's from the Midwest. There was always going to be ties there and stuff, but Lewis was probably the biggest one that, kind of, I even said on Twitter that it kind of blindsided like me, especially because I had heard from multiple people that Lewis was intent on staying.
Is he the biggest loss? Because obviously when you talk about defensive ends, that's been a really important position for Utah football's collective identity. He's been a very successful coach in identifying and developing talent there. But beyond his own position room, he's an unbelievable recruiter and massively important to Utah football's efforts in that way. So If we take out Jason Beck, because coordinators have more influence, the other assistants, is he the biggest loss?
Yeah, I mean, him or Freddie could be the two that you would go with as terms of biggest losses, mainly because of the recruiting pull that both of them have. Lewis Powell for the Polynesian community, and Freddie just overall is just a really, really solid recruiter. But, that's the thing, is it's like, it's gonna suck for a minute, and I will fully admit that. But I think that there's a very strong chance that Utah comes out on the other side of this. I'm not going to say in a better position than they were, but I think that they're going to be in a solid position from where things started. But yeah, Lewis and Freddie, especially from the recruiting side of thing, I think the two of those are probably the biggest loss. If you have to categorize something as a massive loss, I think the two of them are where you put it.
Sammy Mora is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about what has been kind of an uncomfortable and unpleasant weekend I shouldn't even say weekend. It was the middle of the week, and a New Year's holiday that's been uncomfortable and unpleasant for Utah fans because of a lot of coaching turnover happening. And, of course, the transfer portal opening today marks the official beginning of player turnover season as well. Smith Snowden's name is in the transfer portal. Teo Johnson's name is in the transfer portal. John Henry Daly made the announcement a few days ago that he's headed into the transfer portal. So, look, two of those guys were among the best four defensive players you had on your team. How do you manage those types of losses if, indeed, those guys end up leaving the roster?
Well, I think that, it's so interesting because, like, Smith and Teo specifically had moments where they looked really good this season, but they also had moments where they looked out of their depth. And that's the thing is can Utah find, specifically Morgan Scally and Sharif Shaw and whoever Morgan brings in as the new safeties coach, can they find someone who is comparable or better than what the two of them can do? I think for Smith specifically, you have Jackson Benny and you have J.C. Hart. Those are two guys that I think could fill that role that Smith had, and maybe you're net positive. Teo, it's interesting because, you have possibly Nate Ritchie coming back. You have Rabbit possibly coming back, Rabbit Evans. And then you have a group of young guys that I think are potentially good players. You have Nate Tillman, you have Brock Fonowi Moana, you have Manny Fuller. You have guys that are in these safety rooms that I think, could come out and play at a high level. And it's just going to be a matter of, I always the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh. I think that's a big mentality that at least I've been telling people on Utah for years now. And Utah does a really good job at netting a positive when you go back and look at things. If you go back and look at last year's portal class of who left versus who came in, there's no argument. There's no way you can disagree that Utah wasn't a net positive in the portal last year. And I think, honestly, until proven otherwise, I'm going to continue to work under that assumption that Utah will always end up on top in the portal and I heavily say until proven otherwise, because I know there's going to be a class where Utah flails in the portal. I just considering Utah's track record on the defensive side, specifically at corner and safety, I don't really have a lot of worries in there. John Henry is a completely different thing because he had this All-American season, but is he going to be able to play in 2026? That's the big thing. And he says that he'll be ready in 6 months from this Achilles tear. I have a hard time believing that because there's so many other athletes that you see it takes a year for them to come back, or even when they do come back, they're not the same player that they were before the injury. So that one's going to be interesting to monitor too. But I was thoroughly impressed with Lance Holtzclaw in the bowl game, and if he is one of the starting ends for Utah next year, I think that Utah's in a good position. It took him a couple of series to get going, but once he got going, he really got going, and he was someone who stood out to me in that game.
Yeah, I like Holtzclaw quite a bit. I think they could even add a little weight to him and see what he could be. I'm going to be unfair to you right now because I put some poll questions out on young players specifically, freshmen, incoming freshmen, redshirt freshmen, that I think it's important for Morgan Scally and this staff to retain guys that have extremely high upside that are still young, because the players we've talked about previously, there are guys that have a year of eligibility left. There are John Henry Daly, who's got, I think, one functional year of football left because of the injury recovery and things like that. But these young guys that showed some flashes this year, I'm going to give you defensive side. I'm going to give you offensive side. So just bear with me, if you will.
You're good.
You can only keep one, okay? You can guarantee yourself that one of these guys is staying on the roster. Pupu Sepulona, Cash Dillon, Elijah Ellis, Carson Kaufusi. Who is the one?
Elijah Ellis.
All right. Elijah Ellis, by the way, receiving 33% of the vote. Cash Dillon, 23%. Carson Kaufusi, 28%. Pupu, 15%. So everyone so far agrees with you. 10 hours left on the poll, by the way, for all of you out there listening, at Real OC Sports on Twitter. Go tell me which young defensive player you would lock down. Same question, but with offensive guys. And I cheated a little bit because I think Celesi Moa is going to be an offensive guy. I think he's an important recruit. I love the legacy thing. Daniel Bray, Celesi Moa, J.J. Buchanan, Hunter Andrews.
See, now this one is the hard one because there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. Oh God, my gut is pulling me. I'm gonna cop out on this one, OC. I'm gonna take Moa and Buchanan are the two that I'm gonna take because I think the two of them. If you get a wide receiver room with those two, and I'm gonna put Larry Simmons in that group as well. If you get an offensive, like a wide receiver core of those three, I think you're off to the races. So I know you said I could only pick one, but I'm going to cop out, and I'm going to take Moa and Buchanan.
Okay, her answer is Moa because she said Moa first. Alphabetically, it would be Buchanan first, but Moa came out of her mouth first. So right now, 29%.
Hey, it was the order. It was the order you said them to me.
Correct.
It's the order you said. So I'm spinning this back onto you, OC.
That's fine. Daniel Bray is only getting 4%. Celesi Moa, 29%. J.J. Buchanan, who obviously coming off an incredible bowl game performance, he's got 65%. Hunter Andrews is down there at 2%. Again, go vote on the poll if you can. So, look, I agree with you, by the way. That would be an incredible wide receiving core. I'm looking at reports that Morgan Scalley wants to air it out. I'm looking at the names of offensive coordinator candidates, Jonathan Smith, Brian Johnson, Aaron Roderick, and I'm saying, all right, I kind of would be okay with any of these dudes as long as you have the right personnel, but who is most likely, in your mind, to end up as the offensive coordinator at the University of Utah in 2026?
Oh, God, again, OC, you're just pushing me into a corner. I would not be shocked if the names that, like, I'm hearing the most, Jonathan Smith was on campus yesterday. He's a name that I can get behind. Honestly, like, I'm fine with any of the candidates that have been presented to me and the names that I've heard. Smith, Marcus Arroyo is another one that I've heard, the Arizona State offensive coordinator. But I think that the thing that we're looking at the most, like you said, is airing it out, and also you need to find an offensive coordinator who has that plug and play style of offense. I think we saw this year that those plug and play offenses are the way to go. The Ludwig style of you need 16 years, a PhD, and you need to be able to like discern the square root of pi or whatever. Those types of offenses are a thing of the past. Like, it needs to be something that's plug and play. And I know, Jonathan Smith has been almost a decade removed from being a signal caller, but I think that there's a lot to like about what he did. If you go back and watch the Washington offenses that he had, especially the Washington offenses that Utah fans should be very well aware of because they torched Utah for that stretch. There's some good things to see about it, and I feel like Morgan would not hire an offensive coordinator unless he has the ability to adapt. I know there's a lot of concerns about running quarterbacks. What's he going to do? How is this thing going to happen? How are we going to handle that? Like, Morgan is a smart guy, and I don't think he's going to hire someone who doesn't know how to adapt with the changes, especially adapt with running quarterbacks, because that's where college football is going. But I honestly, as of right now, I'm fine with any of the candidates because I think there's a positive way that you can spin most, if not all of them.
All right. I'm going to be really mean again. I'm going to ask you this question. Which is most likely, this is a Twitter poll going up right now, which is most likely at the quarterback position, because I think this is more important even than who the coordinator is. Devin Dampier coming back, Bird Ficklin being your starter, or neither being your starter, and you come starting it fresh with, I don't know, maybe a transfer?
OC, these questions, these polls, I can't with you. But
Look,
honestly,
it's all speculation. We know it. You're not like, we're not going to hold you down and punish you for being incorrect if that ends up being the case. Because all of us are just like scratching our heads. I mean, I know you're very well sourced. I feel like I'm pretty well sourced, and I'm getting a lot of like, I don't know, even from people who should know.
That's the thing. That's the thing about this last week and a half. It's been a lot of people just being like, "Well, I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything?" It's just been that, and that's the thing that is so wild about this last week. I'll say, but I can see a world where Devin is the starter next year and Bird is the backup. I can also see a world next year where Bird is the starter and Devin is somewhere else. The third option of neither is here is one that I think is for me, at least currently, just speculating. This is pure speculation. I'm going to preface this. I see that one as probably the least likely, given where we currently are in this day and time on January 2nd at 12:22 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I think a lot of it depends on who the offensive coordinator hire is, but I think, again, going back to Morgan's smart enough to, I think, know that he needs to find someone that can tune something and have an offense that's catered towards Bird and Devin, because they have very similar skill sets. We have seen that all season, that the two of them have very similar ways that they run things on the offense. So, I mean, that is probably the biggest non-answer I could ever give you, but I'm going to say I could see either A or B happening.
All right. Okay. I like it. Okay. The hits keep coming because, again, it's impossible to know, but Morgan Scalley has to put his stamp on this program. And a part of that now in college football is your general manager. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this. There's the way that Utah's had it for several years now. You have a Bobby Blecken type character who is like effectively a guy who started in your film room and dumping garbages and climbed up the ladder and ended up in a pretty influential position. There's what Stanford did, where you just find like the most charismatic, famous alum and like, hey, you're our general manager and we're actually going to give you real authority. There's everything in between along the spectrum, right? Where does Utah go with the general manager under Morgan Scalley in a new regime that also does include this private equity situation?
Honestly, I could see Morgan going the way of, kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but someone who has deep ties recruiting-wise, but also knows how to handle things on that financial side. I don't see them going the Stanford Andrew Luck way, because I just don't see them, because correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Andrew Luck, wasn't he a big part of the hiring committee for their new head coach?
He made the decision, yes.
Yeah, see, I don't see Utah doing that. That's just not who I see Morgan as. I don't see him as someone who's like going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to give up these responsibilities to you, the general manager. I don't see that happening. So I would say probably not the Stanford route, but again, never say never with anything. But I just have a hard time believing that Morgan, who has dreamed of being a head coach his entire life, giving up some key head coaching responsibilities to a general manager. But I do think that having someone who is very tied to the recruiting community, who knows how to run a high level program, I think that's the route that needs to happen with the GM role.
So I saw people bringing this point up over the weekend as well, and I'm interested because Morgan was like the captain that was nice to me when I was a crappy walk-on on the team. So I still don't look at Morgan through the lens that a good media member should. Like, I consider him a friend and somebody I look up to a lot, and I think he's going to be great. He is like potentially even less connected from a network standpoint than Kyle Whittingham was. And that was always a criticism of Whittingham, that he wasn't willing to go outside of his box. Coach Witt, he at least had jobs at other schools. Morgan never has. Now, Morgan is a little bit more loquacious and social and things like that. So I imagine he's he's put out feelers and he has contacts. Just because he hasn't worked outside of the Utah program doesn't mean that he's not able to make those connections. But I think it is a worthy question to ask whether or not that is something that could affect him as he's trying to fill out a staff, as you move forward with things like recruiting and different footprints and all that, because his entire career, his entire life has been here with the Utah football program. Most people see that as a benefit. Is it in any way a liability?
I'm going to push back on you on this one because I've actually heard the opposite. I've heard that Morgan is very well connected with recruiting, not with recruiting, but with coaching circles outside of Utah. I've heard that he has a bigger network than Kyle did, and that's what I've heard from people. So I don't think it's a valid concern right now. And the fact that we're not talking about Aaron Roderick as Utah's next offensive coordinator, I think already speaks a little bit of volumes, because if Morgan's network was really as small as people think it was, A-Rod would have been hired, and then we would have continued to have this cross. I don't even know how to describe it, but you would have this cross of Utah coaches going to BYU and BYU coaches going to Utah,
and then coming back, yeah.
Yeah, someone coming back. You're there for a year and a half. You're at Utah for a year and a half. Then you go to BYU for a year, and then you come back to Utah for a year. I think with the names that we're hearing, there's a lot of them that aren't even for offensive coordinator specifically. There's a lot of guys that aren't even tied to this program. So I think that that right there proves that Morgan has a wider net than Kyle ever had. Kyle took from Utah and BYU because that's what he knew, and so, but Morgan, the names that we're hearing as offensive coordinator, that proves right there that I think that Morgan has a wider network than that some people think he does.
I mean, I get the sense that because of what I know about how Morgan communicates, and I get the sense that it's not as much of a concern as maybe some people are bringing it up as, but it is something when you've only worked one job and you haven't actually been on staff with other guys. You don't know what it's really like. Maybe you know them from conventions and maybe you know them from mutual friends and things like that. But it is certainly different than actually having worked with individuals. So it's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And again, it's you go back to whether or not this head coach in waiting thing ended up being the right thing for Utah to do or not. You can't unring the bell. What has happened. But that is one of those things where letting people go out into the world and then come back might not be the worst thing, but we'll just have to adjust based on the reality that we're living in, where that is not the reality for Morgan Scalley. He's 1-0 as a head coach. What's his record going to be next year?
Oh God. Okay. Honestly, I don't want. The last time I gave us a prediction, I did say I gave Utah going 9-3 this year, and so I was very happy to be wrong on that front this year. I don't know. That's the thing is I think a lot of it depends on roster and who the coaching staff is. I think, and what the rest of the Big 12 looks like. There's already a lot of quarterback movement. You have Leavitt leaving Arizona State. You have Sorsby leaving Cincinnati. You have Beck leaving Iowa State. You have whatever Avery Johnson's going to do at Kansas State. There's a lot of QB movement already in the Big 12, and that's kind of interesting to watch too. I can't believe you're making me give a prediction, and we're 2 days into the year, and we haven't even finished the coaching staff.
Again, it's no one's writing this down to bring it up later on you, but I mean,
hey, you never know. You never know what people are doing on their free time right now.
I'm gauging your optimism because I have said for years now there will be growing pains. I think Kyle Whittingham's one of the best coaches in college football. He had growing pains when he became a first-time head coach. It's just the natural way of things. And I don't think it's saying that Morgan's not going to be a great coach if it takes him a couple years to adjust. If you have to suffer through a 7-5, 8-4 before you get back to competing for 10-win seasons, I think that's something we should all kind of batten down the hatches for. But I'm trying to be a realist.
Yeah, let's see. I just pulled up the schedule and I'm perusing it right now. I'm gonna say floor 8 wins. Ceiling 10.
Your floor is 8 wins, Sammy?
Just
that's your floor?
Wow, that's big.
Idaho, you have Idaho, okay?
Okay, win.
Idaho, or Arkansas, who's in the same kind of boat as Utah right now, whole new coaching staff, who is coming from the G5. How is he going to handle it? You have Utah State, Arizona, Cincinnati. What's Cincinnati going to look like without Sorsby and some of their key playmakers?
Terrible.
You have Colorado, who is
Terrible.
Colorado right now.
Yeah.
You have Iowa State, who is down to like 18 players on their roster.
No Rocco
currently.
Becht. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no Rocco Becht. You have TCU, who's without Josh Hoover. You have BYU. That one is probably going to be. I think that's going to be another good game. You have Houston, who their starting quarterback next year is probably going to be a five-star true freshman. How is he going to handle things? You have Kansas, who is Kansas, and you have West Virginia. What is Rich Rod going to do in his second year with 48 freshmen that just signed in December?
You know what? I like your breakdown, because as you're saying it, I'm like, okay. You're front loaded in a way that you should be like 6-0. So
well, and that's not that was like because they haven't released the dates of any of the conference games right now, so that was just me going down the list in alphabetical order.
Well, in any case, I think that 8-4 is a floor. I love that possibility. It seems crazy optimistic for a floor, but I'll ride with you on it, because you're right. While Utah is dealing with all this uncertainty, every team that you named, with the exception of BYU, is dealing with the same level of uncertainty. And BYU, by the way, might lose 2 coordinators and who knows what else after that. So they might be dealing with the same thing. So, point well made, Sammy.
Thank you. That was just me throwing something at a wall, and we'll see if it sticks. You know, hit me back up on an actual score prediction when we get like in June or July.
When we actually have real information. All right, I like that.
When I actually know who the offensive coordinator is and what this roster looks like.
Well, keep up all the great work you're doing. I know that it's a whirlwind right now that probably doesn't slow down for another 13 days or so. So good on you for doing the work.
We have basketball and gymnastics starting tonight, so it's just going to get crazier for us.
Well, have some fun along the way. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, OC.
Sammy Mora, you can tell why we have her on. She's great. She knows it all. And she's the managing editor over at Youth Sports Nation. This is a really, really uncertain time. 8-4 is a floor. I will sign if that is the possibility. If that's a realistic possibility for Utah and for Morgan Scalley in his first season as a head coach, 8-4 would be a rousing success.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And I know that people are like yelling at their radios right now. 8-4, we're better than 8-4. You can't expect 8-4, guys. If you can strip the offense down to the studs and still be an 8-4 team the very next year, I'm not gonna cry about that. All right, got to take a quick one here. The Daily Dump. There's been so many things that we haven't even talked about because of how crazy it is with Utah football. We'll try to touch on several of them in the Daily Dump. Brought to you by Valley Plumbing next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Truck with the Duck now covers your plumbing, drain cleaning, and HVAC needs. Check out Valley Plumbing and tell them OC sent you. All right. Daily Dump, stories in and around the world of sports that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet today. This one is actually getting worse, so it's leapfrogging another one to the top of my Daily Dump list. So everyone knows Ole Miss head coach from the 2025 regular season, Lane Kiffin, he's already moved on to LSU, his new job, right? And much like coaches do, including Kyle Whittingham, when they get a new job, they plan on taking a bunch of people with them. And Lane Kiffin is taking 6 Ole Miss assistants to LSU eventually. Well, that eventually might be this week. And, of course, that is problematic because Ole Miss is still in the college football playoff.
Yeah, baby.
Ole Miss has a chance to win a national championship, a real chance to win a national championship. They're down to the Final Four.
Do you leave for a ring or do you leave for a salary drop? I mean, salary increase.
According to sources close to the situation, and of course, I don't have a lot of Ole Miss sources or a lot of LSU sources, but sources on both sides saying it remains unclear whether or not those guys will get started at LSU this week or they will remain to coach a semifinal game for the Ole Miss Rebels.
Don't you just love this? Don't you just love that this is how Ole Miss sticks one to Lane Kiffin as he left before the playoffs?
Well, the problem is Lane Kiffin still might stick it to Ole Miss by being like, guys, I hired you at LSU. I know that all of these guys we started the year with now have a chance to win a national championship and have 2 more games to play in that effort. But here's the thing. Transfer portal's open. I really need you to be pushing for LSU right now. I need you in Baton Rouge. Lane Kiffin could insist that Ole Miss's staff leave the team before a semifinal game. The college football calendar is absolutely broken, and this is maybe the best evidence of it. If Lane Kiffin does this, he is the biggest piece of you-know-what in college football.
Yeah, that's very true.
If you, like, I know there are people upset with Kyle Whittingham for taking coaches from the University of Utah and for taking coaches from BYU. Go ahead and be upset. It's what you do, all right? If Kyle Whittingham had taken a job while Utah was in the college football playoff, he had taken this Michigan job, and then instead of letting Lewis Powell and Jason Beck and whoever else coach the team through the playoff, however long that lasts for them, if he had said, you know what, I know that you won the quarterfinal game. I need you, though. I need you here in Ann Arbor before the semifinal game starts. At that point, I'm saying cancel the statue.
Use fans wouldn't have let that plane get off the ground. They would have done something to stop it.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. And by the way, the note that I wrote down for the Daily Dump was to point out the fact that Lane Kiffin is such a turd that he went to an LSU women's basketball game instead of attending the Ole Miss quarterfinal game against Georgia.
He doesn't want to go to that.
He should absolutely want to go to that. If he cares even a tiny bit about the coaches and the players that helped him be successful and get the LSU job that he's got, he should have been at that game. He doesn't have – if he had been in his office grinding tape, I'd have been like, all right.
Yeah.
But literally the same hours that game was being played, he's sitting at an LSU women's basketball game.
And they lost that game, too. They lost to Kentucky.
You know why? Because of you, Lane Kiffin. It sucks.
But I guarantee you, Georgia fans would have helped them find him and get him.
Dude,
he wouldn't have gotten out of that stadium last night.
At the end of the day, it just shows how non-sentimental college football is. How the coaches are just like, oh, yeah, congrats. Like, thanks for getting us to the playoffs. I'm taking this other job, and I'm not even going to watch you. I'm not even going to come. Like, don't make it about you, Lane Kiffin. Like, show up in a disguise, go up in a suite.
Yeah.
And, like, have a hat pulled down low over your eyes. The cameras might have still found you, whatever. Don't do any media. But you should be there watching those guys. I mean, and if you're not there watching those guys, sit at home and watch the guys so you can text them a congratulations after. It's insane. They didn't even watch that game.
It possibly is future LSU quarterback Trinidad Chambliss just won a game last night.
By the way, speaking of future LSU quarterbacks, Brendan Sorsby visiting Texas Tech and going straight from Lubbock to Baton Rouge as he's on his free agent tour as the number 1 player in the transfer portal. Guess who the number 2 player currently, well, at least as of this morning, guess who the number 2 player in the transfer portal was? John Henry Daly.
Really? Wow.
So it is what it is, but man, is it gross. And Dan Lanning might be the guy to take out of Oregon and make it to our college football commissioner, because he reiterated after his team won a semifinal game in very, very impressive fashion, blanking Texas Tech, embarrassing a Red Raiders team that over the course of the year was top 5 offense, top 5 defense in the country from a scoring perspective.
Yeah.
Looked terrible. Made Baron Morton look like the quarterback I think he is. They turned him over a bunch of times. Oregon, honestly, their defense won them that game, and we came into the game talking about the Texas Tech defense, who it performed incredibly well again. The offense just couldn't make anything happen. Well, Dan Lanning, in the postgame and in the celebration of his team being one of the Final Four teams, he said, look, you got to fix the calendar. College football season should be over on January 1st. His point was, because he was asked about how the bye hurt all but Indiana. Everyone who had a bye game lost again.
Except for Indiana. 1-7 in the last 2 years.
Which is crazy.
0-2 for Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
So how Georgia had 25 days from their last game until the playoff game or whatever.
December 3rd or 4th was your last game for that SEC title game.
And he said, look, here's what you do. If you have to start everyone in week 0 so they can fit it all in, fine. If you eliminate one of the bye weeks, fine. But you play the playoffs every weekend in December, which this was something I loved. He made the point that Saturdays in December, college football has surrendered some of those to the NFL.
Yeah.
The NFL starts playing Saturday games.
Yep.
He's like, why? Go head-to-head with the NFL. Play the games so that the national championship is on January 1st, transfer portal opens January 2nd, and this Ole Miss situation, coaches can move on. If they're taking new opportunities, they can move on. For Dan Lanning, it matters because Dan Lanning's losing his 2 coordinators this year.
Right.
They're both moving on.
He's probably going to lose a third of his roster, at least.
And he's like, look, I don't want those guys to have to be doing 2 jobs while we're preparing to win a national championship. But they have to right now.
Yeah.
And that sucks. So Dan Lanning's got the solution. End the season on January 1st. Make the Rose Bowl the national championship game every single year. Yesterday notwithstanding, it's usually a really good weather game.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Speaking of yesterday, how did you enjoy watching Indiana shellac Alabama all the way on the West Coast?
Loved it.
38-3.
It's such a strange deal for me. I think Indiana's going to win a national championship.
A national championship and a Heisman Trophy in the same year.
For the team that 2 years ago, when Curt Cignetti took over, was the losingest program in Division I football. They had the worst win percentage. They had the most losses of any Division I football team. And now they are on the precipice of potentially winning a national championship this year. I don't think I don't think Miami can beat them. I think Oregon might be able to.
Yeah. Oregon's got a really good team. But that was the same team they faced in Eugene and won by 10.
That's right.
And they lost their best wide receiver throughout that game.
Indiana's on a different level right now. Curt Cignetti is a fascinating dude. They are a scary, scary bunch.
With that rise of that empire coming up and the default of another one, how weird is it to watch Alabama go from the Kings to just another great football team?
Well, Alabama's in a really weird spot, in my opinion, because they hired Kalen DeBoer, and I thought that was the right hire. Kalen DeBoer was amazing at South Dakota State. He's amazing at Washington. I thought he was the right hire, and then it immediately, 10 minutes after the hire happened, people already started talking about, I don't know if he's the right fit.
Yeah.
And even in this this coaching carousel cycle, people were like, yeah, Kalen DeBoer probably wants out of Alabama. He might take that Michigan job. It's like, what? How is this happening? And maybe it's just because the pressure of trying to follow Nick Saban is too great. Speaking of Nick Saban, did you see this fun little factoid?
I did not.
All 4 of the head coaches that are currently still in the hunt for a national championship have at some point been on a Nick Saban staff.
Wow.
All 4 of them.
Signetti, yeah. Lanny, yeah. Oh, I didn't even know. Was Cristobal? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm forgetting Ole Miss too, huh? I didn't
Crazy.
know that. I didn't know that.
All of these guys have spent time underneath Nick Saban, every single one of them. I saw this. I'm doing this. This is completely independent of all the stories that actually matter. But I saw this a little trivia question, and I was like, I bet Martin would know the answer to this quick, because they were stumping all these NFL head coaches by asking them this question.
Okay.
And I was like, you got a pretty deep little encyclopedia in that brain of yours when it comes to the NFL knowledge, right?
I pretty much do.
Yeah, you do a great job of it. So you'll probably get this faster than any of the NFL head coaches they asked, right?
Okay.
There's currently one NFL head coach who had more rush yards in his career than Bo Jackson. Who is it?
How many yards did Bo Jackson have?
Hold on a second.
It's not McDaniels, not Sean Payton, not Kevin Stefanski.
He rushed for 2,782 yards.
Okay.
He only played for 4 years.
Okay, so I'm looking for someone over 2,000 yards. Okay.
You're looking for 2,783 yards or more.
There's only 2 coaches. It's either Dan Campbell or Jim Harbaugh, because they're the only ones that played. Pete Carroll didn't play. I'm not going to pick the NFC North guy. I'll go Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh has 5 more career rushing yards.
Let's go.
Isn't that wild?
He played for the Bears, so I do remember a little bit of Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh has more career rushing yards than Bo Jackson.
Oh man, what Bo Jackson could have been if he would have just stayed healthy?
140 starts in Jim Harbaugh's NFL career, 26,000 passing yards, 129 touchdowns, 117 interceptions.
Hey, let's put this to hockey real quick. 'Cause we're in the Utah Hockey Club sweater there, and you've been in maybe a process of getting selected for teams. Clayton Keller, Team USA.
Clayton Keller on Team USA. We thought that he was a 4 Nations snub.
I thought he was.
And then the World Championships, he kind of helped spearhead the effort for a Team USA that outperformed some expectations there. It seemed like he was definitely going to be a shoo-in for this roster, but you never know. He hasn't had his best NHL season so far.
He's been a solid captain in my eyes.
He's been solid.
He has been solid.
He's been outshined a little bit by Schmaltz and outshined a little bit by Gunther and some of these guys. But that's kind of okay when you're the captain who's the do-it-all type player. But Clayton Keller is officially on the Team USA hockey roster for the upcoming Olympics.
I expect him to be an alternate captain, 100%. I don't think he will be the captain, but I expect him to be the alternate captain on that team. And it'll be pretty interesting because Team USA brought basically the same roster they had at the 4 Nations, but they did beef it up just a little bit to, make some hits in the tournament.
It's pretty much the same roster as the 4 Nations. Canada brings back 19 with 6 newcomers. The only 3 newcomers to the Team USA Olympic roster relative to the 4 Nations roster: Clayton Keller, Tage Thompson, and Seth Jones.
Good ones. Are you going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch USA hockey?
Probably not, if I'm being honest.
Probably not? Oh, man, I'm going to wake up and do it.
I applaud you. I really do. I got 3 children, 6 and under. So they might be waking me up anyway. Man. All of you parents out there who've been dealing with sick kids over the holiday, by the way, because it's just that time of year.
Yeah.
And you go to a party and kids hang out and one little runny nose turns into 5 runny noses, whatever. It is the absolute worst.
Then all of a sudden you hear that dreadful cough.
Oh. Matt Boldy, Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Jake Ensel, Jack Hughes, Clayton Keller, Dylan Larkin, Austin Matthews, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Tage Thompson, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk, Vincent Trocheck. Those are your forwards. Brock Faber, Noah Hannafin, Quinn Hughes, Seth Jones, Charlie McAvoy, Jake Sanderson, Jacob Slavin, and Zach Wierenski are your defensemen. Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman are your goalkeepers for the Olympic roster.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be.
Yeah. So congrats to Clayton Keller, having developed friendships with a couple of guys who were able to represent our wonderful country in Olympic Games.
Heck yeah.
It is truly one of the greatest honors that an athlete can have. And I think because pro athletes get to do it now, we kind of, as a public, forget that. I think we get so focused on the championship accolades that these guys have, in the NBA or in the NHL or whatever, and we get so focused on their contract values and their shoe deals and things like that, that sometimes we forget that these guys, like all of us, for the most part, love their country and feel honored by the opportunity to represent their country, and to win a gold medal in the Olympics is an amazing thing. So Clayton Keller's got an opportunity to do that now. This is like life-changing stuff. This is the thing that, again, the sports public, when you're talking about great pro athletes, we're always just like, well, did he win a Super Bowl? Did he win an NBA Finals? Did he? And when you talk to, like, Darren Williams is the guy that I, am friends with that had that opportunity, and he's like, that absolutely. He obviously never won an NBA championship, but like all-star appearances and things like that became somewhat routine for him when he was healthy.
Yeah,
and to play alongside the best in the world and win a gold medal for him was like the biggest deal of his career.
We know in the summer ones you would sign up for wrestling, but what's an Olympic sport that you would play?
I feel like I would be good at bobsledding.
Okay.
Because you got to be able to run fast while pushing something.
Okay.
I honestly believe I have no scientific evidence behind this, but I think that I'm not a world-class speedster when it comes to like just running.
Yeah.
But I think I am way, 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 way above average when it comes to running against resistance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, if you put me and 100 people on the street in shorts, we're just like, hey, run a race, I'm probably going to be number 50. Okay. Probably right in the middle. If you say, okay, now instead of just running that race, you got to push whatever, a 500-pound sled or a 200-pound sled or whatever it is, I'm probably like second. I'm fast when I got to push stuff. So I think I could bobsled.
Did you ever pancake someone in practice?
That's the only place I ever pancaked someone. What
Really?
are you talking about?
Okay, I'm just asking.
Actually, that's not true. I think I had a few pancakes in games at Weber State, but like for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I got some junk in the trunk, and like it changes the angle. It changes the angle when you're running against resistance, and it changes, like the super fast guys that are great striders and twitchy.
Yeah.
It takes that away from them, and now you got to be able to like run while you're pushing. I think I'm elite at that. No, I don't think I'm elite at it. I think I'm better than average at it.
All right.
What about you? You'd be a ski jumper, I can tell you.
I would love to have done ski jumping. Winter Olympics, if I could learn how to skate a little bit, I probably would have played goalie.
All right.
I'm that big, I'm that tall, I could play it. Defense if I could learn how to skate.
You would be the tallest goalie in NHL history.
I would love that honor. That would be cool.
Because you're what?
6'8".
You're 6'8"?
6'8", 330.
There's never been an NHL goalie that tall, I bet.
There's been NHL players, but not goalies. You're right about that.
Tallest goalie in NHL history. 6'7", Ben Bishop, allegedly.
Okay.
Ivan Fedotov, Mikko Koskinen, and Mads Sogard.
Okay, I know those guys.
Prospects like Henrik Tikkanen, who is 6'8", could potentially surpass if he ends up playing in the NHL.
All right, I got some competition. I'm going to get on the ice and learn.
So, yeah, Big Ben was the nickname of Ben Bishop.
Yep, I remember Ben Bishop.
Makes sense. All right, that's the new goal for Martin. Tallest in NHL history. All right, we'll double up again. We got to come back with Shehan Jayaraja talking all of these playoff games and the results. We're down to the Final Four in college football. Do we believe that any of these four teams actually could win the championship, or is there still an imposter? Shehan Jayaraja next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3 on the Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. The airing of grievances comes in 25 minutes. I have a feeling that you're going to be fielding lots of phone calls, Martin, about grievances with a certain former head coach of this university. But we'll see. 877-353-0700 if you want to text your calls at Real OC Sports. We will field your grievances, and you can unburden yourself for the first time in 2026. We welcome Shahan Jayaraja, National College Football writer over at CBS Sports. Shahan, welcome to the show again, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Are you a resolutions or yearly goals type of guy?
Well, I'll tell you what, my year doesn't end until January 19th when the national championship hits. So as soon as it hits January 20th, then I'll start to think about what I want to do next year.
That's perfect. Absolutely. All right. So, look, a lot has happened in these last 10 days or so with Utah football, and obviously that's where we butter our bread, so that's where I'll start with you. Kyle Whittingham is the head coach of Michigan, and he has taken Jason Beck, Jim Harding, Lewis Powell, Micah Simon, his brother Freddie Whittingham. He has done what every coach does and kind of like raided the coffers of his current university to take to the next place. People are pretty upset about it, but I think looking at the future for Utah football, Morgan Scalley's the right guy. Were you in any way shocked to see Kyle Whittingham not only take the Michigan job, but to handle it the way he's handled it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I think that obviously part of the reason for the transition plan was to set things up for Morgan Scalley to be in a good position, right? And I think that with the changes that he's made, with the coaches that he's bringing, I mean, that's no longer the case, right? Like, all of a sudden, I think that Morgan Scalley is going to be stepping into essentially a full program rebuild, which is certainly not what I think Utah hoped whenever they named him the head coach in waiting. I think they hoped that it would be more of an Urban Meyer to Kyle Whittingham sort of handoff. But, you know, I think that at the same time, I mean, look, let's put it this way. If Morgan Scalley was an outside hire, I still think it would be a very good and correct outside hire, right? And it's going to end up being a little bit more like that. Now, he still has advantages to try to keep certain players around, certain infrastructure intact. A lot of internal operations, I'm sure, will still work the same way. But it's going to be interesting because obviously, like you referred to, I mean, they're going to have to go out and put together a new staff. And certainly when you talk about the programs in Utah, BYU and Utah, there's a lot of overlap between how those two programs hire and who they try to bring as coaches. And now, by the way, too, BYU is going to be in a similar position with trying to hire a defensive coordinator. So the competition between those two schools for a relatively small pool of candidates, I think, is going to be really interesting.
So there's this rumor, Bill, surrounding the offensive coordinator position at the University of Utah. And Morgan Scalley has only spent every moment of his career at Utah, right? The network, I mean, he's a social guy. He's a good networker and things like that. But it's an insular community out here, as you're already pointing out. And he hasn't worked with all that many different offensive minds, names, et cetera. The list of names that they seem to be talking to at Utah includes people that he's never worked with before. He may have coached against some of these people. And it's just it's a little bit outside the box because of that. Does it affect, you think, at the end of the day, who Utah is able to get, that Morgan Scalley has only ever worked with whoever Kyle Whittingham had on his staff?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it matters, right? I mean, I think that when you have familiarity, when you've worked with guys before, that gives you an advantage. And the fact that he hasn't done that, I think, certainly is a factor. At the same time, I mean, look, obviously, when you talk about Jason Beck coming, he spent time at BYU as quarterbacks coach and as a player, but I don't think that was the primary reason that they brought him here. They brought him here because he was a really good offensive coordinator, and also, by the way, because he came with a quarterback as well. So I don't necessarily think that it means that, one, that he has to stick with what he knows. And two, I mean, the reality is, too, is let's say that Jason Beck had never been in the state of Utah. Well, he still would have left and come for a really good opportunity to coach at the University of Utah and contend for a Big 12 championship. I think that's the mindset that he needs to go into this with is, you know what, like, yeah, maybe I don't know all these people. Maybe I haven't worked with all these people. But, one, I've worked with people who have worked with other people and at least can get some endorsements. And two, this is a really good job. We shouldn't limit ourselves to just what's familiar. We should go out there and try to find the best offensive coordinator that we can find in the market.
Who is the best offensive coordinator on the market right now? Because, there's the guys that we've heard their names, and there's guys that are going to be getting phone calls from the quote-unquote bigger jobs. Is there anyone that you have seen or haven't seen associated with Utah that you could see being a fit, given what Morgan Scalley has said about who he'd like to have? He wants to throw the ball around a little bit, thinks that you got to modernize and lean on the passing game. Is there anyone that they should be looking at, maybe that they're not, at least publicly?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know that there's an obvious candidate, right? I think that, I love the process that they went through last time, going through and saying, look, we have, we look at the Mountain West, and we really like what this offense over at New Mexico is doing. And by the way, New Mexico is a really good offense right now, although their head coach is more involved in that in Jason Eck, not to be confused, of course, with Jason Beck. But, I think that that's sort of the direction that you look, right? Like, you look and say, hey, the top offense in college football this year was North Texas. Obviously, a lot of that staff's going to Oklahoma State, but is there anybody that would make sense to be part of this staff? Do you look at a Texas State, similar top 5 in the country in offense? But, I don't know that there are individual names necessarily that jump out to me. I mean, I think that a lot of them, certainly from the group of 5 level especially, have been pulled. So you might need to go a little bit more unorthodox, whether that is, from the NFL, whether that is people who maybe have only been secondary play callers. But, again, I think that Utah's a really good job, and I think that philosophy is probably the bigger thing to keep an eye on more than anything else.
Shahan Jayaraj, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things college football, including the situation Utah is in. They went with all of this distraction. They went out on the field against Nebraska in the Vegas Bowl, and they smashed the Huskers and got Morgan Scalley his first win as a head coach. And then immediately the focus turned towards, all right, well, what about the transfer portal? What's going to happen with these coaching changes? How many guys are going to try to follow to Michigan? Where are other people going to end up? And we're starting to get answers on that today as the transfer portal is officially open. How do you think we should, or what do you think we should anticipate in terms of roster turnover because there has been a coaching turnover?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a number of players who go in the transfer portal, including top contributors, right? But one, it's worth always remembering that doesn't mean that they have to leave. Some players might just want to see what's out there, what kind of offers they get, see what the market is for themselves. And Utah is not a poor program. They're going to be able to pay to keep a lot of these players around. The other thing, too, though, is that, again, this is also one of those spots where we're potentially having an offensive coordinator when that hire is made with ties to players and who can bring some players along could be significant. So, the irony of this moment is that obviously, Kyle Whittingham goes to Michigan. He's expected to bring a number of coaches with him. He's expected to bring a number of players with him. But the same will be true for whoever kind of comes along as an assistant coach as well to Utah. So, the funny thing about this moment, right, is that we had basically a whole month where players could only announce that they were leaving and none could commit. Well, I think that there are going to be a number of players going through their processes, and I expect answers in the next couple of days.
I think the number this morning was something. It was over 3,000 players in the transfer portal, and there's a lot of folks that have a hard time looking at that and feeling like we're in a good spot with college football. Of course, it doesn't mean everyone's going to land at a new place, and some people just end up back at their same school, and not everyone is high profile in that regard. But we've been discussing this for several years now. This is a different window, so they're trying to fix the transfer portal situation by reducing this to a singular window. The numbers continue to increase, and it's open free agency, so I don't understand why if you're a starter, you don't just put your name in to see what happens. But Are we getting closer to a fix or a solution or a workable future with the transfer portal given this new window?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is still so much the Wild West of it all, right? We kind of got the first version of rules coming through with the House case, but frankly, they've never been challenged when it comes to, when it comes to in the legal system. We haven't had sort of going over the cap be challenged. That's going to be the next step. It's going to happen at some point. Eventually, I think we're going to reach a point where we have more legitimate collective bargaining, where we have more legitimate contracts, whether that comes from, again, like I referred to collective bargaining, or whether it comes through legislation. So, I think that all these things are going to slowly get more resolved, but like this is the gold rush right now. This is the moment where everybody has some amount of money available. There's not a whole lot of rules available. There's no protections for players. There's no protections for programs. And I think that long term that's going to change. The question is that a 1 to 2 years long term, or is that a 5 to 10 years long term?
All right, the college football playoff has been fun to watch. We're down to the Final Four. The SEC, which is, it just means more, I don't think has had their best showing necessarily from a result standpoint, if you asked them. Is that going to further shift or start to shift the influence and the power structure in college football if the SEC doesn't produce a national champion this year?
Well, this is what's interesting, right, is that, I'll go back a couple of years to when, Texas was a member of the Big 12. And the way that Texas, which is a very rich and powerful brand, responded to not winning was they essentially took their ball and went home, right? They said, we're leaving, we're joining the SEC, and that's going to help us because we haven't won enough. Well, I think that that's where this starts to get kind of interesting with the SEC. If, let's say, for example, that Ole Miss does not beat Miami. Well, that would be 3 straight years of the SEC not being in a national championship game, which, is a crazy thing to think about. Well, again, I think that you can't really deny that the Big Ten has risen up and arguably surpassed at least the top of the SEC, and at least when it comes to competing for national championships. So, the question becomes, how does that change the nature of things? Because the SEC still has the biggest brand in college football as a conference. It's got many of the biggest brands in college football within it. So I'm curious, long term, does this turn into something where they try to adjust the playoff to skew it more in their favor? Obviously, we've heard about them trying to push to make it a 16-team playoff with 11 auto bids because they feel like that would advantage them. Well, do they try to create a scenario where they're even more advantaged, right? So I think that it's going to be interesting to see these counterweights because the SEC and the Big Ten are certainly the two biggest stakeholders, and they're at odds with each other over many topics. But then also, again, you have the television networks, you have the media companies. I'm curious long term how those dynamics kind of stack up against each other long term in a world where the SEC is no longer the most dominant conference in football.
Can anybody beat Indiana?
Crazy question, right? I don't know that anybody had ever anybody thought that was a question that would be possible. And I'll tell you what, out of the 4 final teams remaining, Indiana was the only one that I got right on my initial bracket. But the way that they played Alabama this past week was just unbelievable. And by the way, Ohio State before that as well. They look like a perfect football team right now. They have no weaknesses. Their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, is playing at an unbelievable level. They're beating teams up in the trenches. Again, they are playing perfect football right now. And when I look at everybody else, I don't see a team that's as complete as Indiana. Now, I think that Oregon is also playing at an incredibly high level. I think that they're a faster team than Indiana, but Indiana was able to match up with them really well when they went on the road to Eugene. So I think that Indiana is the team to beat right now, and certainly I think that Oregon has a chance to do it, but I don't know if Miami or Ole Miss does.
What would it mean for college football? It's trite to say what would it mean for Indiana because they already won a Heisman Trophy, and for them to win a national championship, it seems like everyone's head might explode. But what would it mean for college football if now suddenly, like in the last 2 years, this true bona fide national power has emerged from effectively nowhere.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? And, look, I think that there's a couple aspects to this, right? One is I think that, people, I think, have underestimated how much of that roster he brought with him from James Madison, right? Like most of the best players on that team were players that Curt Cignetti recruited and developed over multiple years. So we can call this a 2-year rebuild, but it's really like a 5-year process when it comes to, Elijah Surratt and D'Angelo Pons and Mikhail Kamara and all those players. The other thing, too, though, is that I actually think that one piece of this that's really getting underrated is, I think that one of the reasons that programs like Indiana and some of the ones in the Big Ten have really thrived is that I think that they're willing to have patience right now. They're willing to let their rosters grow. They're willing to develop over multiple years. There isn't this sort of urgency, an over-urgency, I would argue, that there is in the SEC, right? In the SEC, it's like if you're a freshman and you don't play, you transfer. If your coach isn't good right away, you fire him. There's such a constant churn because of the pressures. And I think that people are going to take all the wrong lessons from Curt Cignetti in Indiana. They're going to say, well, I want to be in the playoff in year one, and if you don't do that, then you're not the guy. Well, again, I think that that's missing a lot of the point of how he got to this point.
What do you expect Kyle Whittingham to do with Michigan football? It's a 5-year contract. Whether he stays the full 5 years to be determined. But how quickly can somebody like Kyle Whittingham get Michigan turned around?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple pieces of this, right? One is this is already a pretty good roster. Not a great roster, but a pretty good roster. I expect it to become an even better roster potentially, with a combination of transfers and also, by the way, maybe some players coming from Utah as well. And so I think that, one, they'll have a chance to be pretty good in year one. I expect this to be probably at most a 3 to 4 year experiment, but I expect those 3 to 4 years to be pretty good. And, they already brought in a borderline top 10 recruiting class that they've managed to mostly hold on to. I think that they're going to have a really good time, with the combination of his experience, his development, his culture setting, and also the staff that they're bringing along. I mean, if you told somebody in the state of Utah this year that you got to have both offensive coordinator Jason Beck and defensive coordinator Jay Hill in the state of Utah this year, you'd probably be feeling pretty good about that. And Michigan's going to kind of have that version, I guess you could say, of a Utah coaching all-star team. So, it's certainly, I think, going to be an interesting experiment, especially, again, I mean, how does it impact recruiting that that this guy's not there for, 5 to 10 years? I think that's going to be a legitimate question. But at the same time, if you get 3 or 4 really good years out of it, I mean, that's probably worth it in the end.
I pay more attention to Big 12 football than I do to any other conference football for obvious reasons, but it seems like there's a disproportionate amount of starting quarterbacks from the Big 12 conference jumping into the transfer portal. Is that a commentary on the Big 12 status in the landscape of college football? Is it just a weird quirk of this year? Am I reading too much into this? But, Levitt and Becht and Sorsby's the number 1 player in the portal, and Hoover and maybe Dampier. Is that a Big 12 problem?
So I think the answer is no. I mean, yes, to start, the Big 12 has had way more players jump in. I think that it's a combination of things, though, right? One is certainly you have, coaching turnover in the conference. That certainly plays a role. All these guys, though, were players that were sought after last year as well in the transfer portal, though, and all decided to stay with their Big 12 teams. I think that with quarterbacks especially, I mean, yeah, obviously the money matters. I mean, there's rumor right now that Brendan Sorsby's camp is asking for $5 million, which would obviously be the highest paid quarterback in the history of college football to this point. But, I think that money tends to be a little secondary, and existential place is a bigger part of it. And if you look through individually, right, Sam Levitt had an injury-plagued season and a disappointing second act at Arizona State. Josh Hoover, I think at TCU, kind of accomplished everything that he thought he could accomplish at TCU, and I think that TCU probably agreed with him. I think that, with Sorsby, obviously he has the breakout season for Cincinnati, but Cincinnati only finishes 7-5. So I think that a lot of this movement on an individual basis, the individual stuff makes sense. And there was just a collection of them because of coaching turnover, because of some of the teams that had disappointing seasons, that it just happened to work out this way. So I don't necessarily think it's a huge long-term worry. And I think it says just a lot more about the quality of quarterbacks that were on the Big 12 this year, even on teams that ended up disappointing.
Is there any serious concern that Ole Miss might lose more coaches before the semifinal is played to LSU because they have to follow Lane Kiffin to their new job?
Yeah, there's definitely concern about that. I think that there wasn't a whole lot of thought that LSU's coaches, new coaches, would still be coaching at Ole Miss on January 2nd. I don't think that they thought that they were going to win the game against Georgia, and they just keep on finding a way. And, so we've heard that there's been reporting down in Louisiana that all 7 coaches who are set to go to LSU were in the building at LSU this morning, right? So, and this is 1 week before they play a playoff game with a chance to go play for a national championship. This is unprecedented, right? And I do think that there is going to be some concern. I think that the pressure and the backlash will be so great that I think that ultimately at least the vast majority will be allowed to coach at Ole Miss through the national championship if they make it. But this is a real push and pull that they're having to deal with and live with right now. And obviously, they've managed to find a way through the first couple of weeks, but it is such an unenviable position to be one of these players with a chance to do something that hasn't been done at Ole Miss in a very long time, and to kind of be screwed over like this.
Can you give me an official prediction on who wins the national championship?
Yeah, after watching the games the past 2 days, I don't know how you could go with anybody but Indiana right now. I think that they are rolling right now. I mentioned it, this is a perfect football team right now. I don't know how you could possibly improve it at this point. They are well coached. They have great players, great team culture, really good in both trenches. Got a quarterback who, again, it's probably one of the most sort of, as a player, low-key Heisman Trophy winners that we've had in a while, but he just makes plays in the biggest moments. I just look at these matchups of the Final Four. I think that they are the team to beat.
I think I agree with you, Shahan. Again, Happy New Year to you. Always appreciate your contributions to the show. We'll chat after the game, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me.
Shahan Jayaraja, National College Football Insider over at CBS Sports, one of the best in the business. And Indiana does look pretty dang unbeatable right now. And Curt Cignetti is just it's funny because it's he's got this sour face all the time. Looks like he's mad. There's nothing for him to be mad about. And then they put a microphone in front of his face and you realize he's not mad at all. He's actually really pleased with the way that his team is playing and the way things are shaking out, as he should be, because they are rolling, baby.
They're just... I would have never thought in my life, Sean, in my entire life, Indiana competing for a national championship.
No way.
I would have never bet any money on that.
In football,
at all.
No. In basketball,
sure.
Even, in basketball, where they traditionally have been a power but have not been kind of on that level as of late, we'd be okay, I could see them get back there in basketball. Literally, people, and most of you know this already, when he took the job, they were the all-time losingest program in college football history.
And see, that tells you something. Obviously, all these coaches talk about the transfer portal and how they have to re-recruiting their own roster. Other programs are destroyed by the NIL, but other programs find a way to rise from the grave and become something out of nothing.
And by the way, Shahan pointed this out, and it's something that we all need to just get over, but we have a hard time doing it. He might win a national championship with a team that's got 20 former JMU Dukes on it.
Yeah.
And the recruiting services, like I've said, they do a much better job than they ever did before, and they continue to get better, and they continue to be more accurate and things like that. But, man,
like, did you watch the 60-minute story on it about Indiana football? It was like 2 weeks ago.
No.
If you didn't catch it, they've spent $60 million, not $6 million, $60 million on Indiana football. Where Indiana University got that money to begin with, but they said, no, we're not going to spend it on basketball. We're not going to spend it on stuff we need around the school, though they do need that. They're going to spend it on football to become relevant again.
Well, you know how crazy it is to be a coach who's coached at Indiana, and you're just like, before you were making $3 million a year, $4 million a year, and then you see after Cignetti has the years, and again, he's earned it, but after he has then the school's just like, we have $11 million to pay the football coach. You'd be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Why? Where were those resources when I was there?
$11 million for the Indianapolis Colts head coach or the Indiana Pacers head coach, but $11 million for Indiana football?
Honestly, if you are a fan of other teams in the Big Ten, and people here are going to start following Michigan football more closely, whether out of hate or spite or because they want to see Kyle Whittingham and his assistants be successful, you're probably just praying that Curt Cignetti gets an NFL job sooner than later. Because you're like, what? He hasn't done it in the way that everyone else has done it.
No.
But he's done it so quickly. And Indiana, even if they don't win a national championship this year, the fact that they were ever ranked number one, which they are right now in the country, is banana sandwich. It's absolutely insane.
They exceeded every expectation already so far in 2 years.
All right, we got to take a break here. We'll come back with the airing of grievances, 877-353-0700, and I'll sprinkle in some transfer portals with local interest, some names that have jumped into the transfer portal today in case you missed them. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. Time for the airing of grievances. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports on Twitter if you want to air your grievance there. Martin will air a grievance. I might air a grievance. 4611 starts us off on the text line. Sorry you caught me in rare form today. College football is broken. Who'd have thought that my beloved alma mater is rebuilding because its flagship head coach gutted it? Super frustrating to watch, and I grow tired of the direction college football is moving. Maybe private equity is the way to go because donors grow weary of this carousel. P.S. to the fans, can we stop saying next man up as to dismiss the success of coaches and players? Next man up is the make yourself feel better mantra. Hey, next
really
man
is.
up.
Yeah,
It
really
is. Like, got to do it. Next man up. I understand what you're saying. It's not intended to dismiss anybody's success. It's intended to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend. Like, I mean, you know what? We started the show today talking about how weird it is because this Utah football thing, it feels like a family breaking up. Feels like your parents got divorced, you know, and maybe we need to adopt that mentality in our next man up. Just don't be sad about it. Let's go. Next man up. Dang it. So I'm with you, 4611. It is a tough time to process the way that college football is. But what's interesting for me, or one of the many interesting things for me about this time, is that it's like this perfect storm for Utah where all of it is happening at once.
Yeah.
Where you have, the end of an era with Kyle Whittingham coming to a close in a way that we didn't really expect. And so all of us had built this picture in our mind of how it was going to look when it happened. And then Sharon Moore's tomfoolery changed that for everyone. I mean, legitimately, that's the guy that changed all of this.
Yep.
If the Michigan job had not been open, then the Kyle Whittingham situation goes very, very differently. He's probably an analyst on Andy Reid's staff if he's coaching at all. And that's caused this situation, and it's decimated Utah's coaching staff, and it's decimated BYU with their best assistant coach.
Yeah.
And who knows how many players. And it's just a strange time, and it's happening while the private equity thing is also coming into play with a lot of questions, and it's happening while the transfer portal window opens, and it's happening while Texas Tech appears to have positioned themselves for sustainable success, and BYU has appeared to position themselves for sustainable success. Oh, and by the way, it's happening while Arizona State, who I thought was going to be a perennial contender from now on, looks like they might be crumbling somewhat.
Yeah.
Have you paid attention?
I
They
have.
extended Kenny Dillingham.
5 years.
And for a bargain, by the way, they extend Kenny Dillingham and Sam Levitt in the transfer portal. Raleek Brown went into their all-conference running back in the transfer portal today.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think you bring that up point about Sam Levitt leaving. I don't think Arizona State's going to miss Sam Levitt. That quarterback for them against Duke in the Sun Bowl was pretty good, if you're asking me, Sean. I'm trying to put a little light on that. But let me ask you this. If Kenny Dillingham did leave for Michigan, would Witt have listened to Arizona State at all?
No.
No?
No, I mean, look.
He did say that there was only a few amount of jobs that he would listen for. Now, I get it. Arizona State wouldn't be the one, but wouldn't it have itched that thing Witt would have wanted of trying to build a program?
I don't think Witt wants to build a program. I think what Witt wants to do is he wants to achieve something greater than he was able to achieve at the University of Utah. And the only obvious way in the modern era of college football to do that is to go to a blue blood or to go somewhere that has more money than Utah. So that leaves options like Texas Tech, who's not a blue blood but has more money.
Yeah.
Oregon, who's coming up on trying to be a blue blood, but it's because of their money, right? A blue blood like USC, if they had called Kyle Whittingham, absolutely. He's going to say, yeah, let me do that.
Yeah.
I think that Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, LSU, I think that these are the types of things. Now, if it had been like a Miami, sure. A Florida, sure. If it was one of these SEC schools that was showing that they're willing to spend some money,
Yeah.
sure. But I don't think it had anything to do with wanting to build a program. I think it has everything to do with I decided I didn't want to be coaching. You told me I had to be done coaching at Utah. So now I'm going to go find a job that actually makes sense for me. And the only thing that makes sense for you is for Kyle Whittingham is a job that you could potentially achieve more than you ever achieved at Utah. And that is a short list.
It is.
Because, you already had an undefeated season. In order for Kyle Whittingham to top his all-time best finishing performance at Utah, he has to finish number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
At Michigan, he sees a path to doing that. And I think a lot of people can see a path to him potentially doing that. It's going to be a lot tougher with Ohio State. And it's funny because you should be saying Ohio State and Penn State. Now you have to say with Ohio State and Indiana as a conference opponent. Wow. 2289, grievance. Anyone and everyone telling fans to be patient and it's going to work out and wait. It's going to take some time. That's crap, and that's the old college sports. Get some urgency, spend your bucks, and get a team together that's good. I have to disagree. I appreciate the grievance. I have to disagree, though. If we abandon patience, we abandon the idea that you can in some way, not the same way as you used to, but that you can in some way develop a little bit over time, and that the only way to be good in college football is to be good now, then guess what? Utah's never going to be good again.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's painful that you have to be patient, but I mean, if you had Morgan Scalley as your next head coach waiting in the wings for 2 years, you got to be patient for him to build the program. You have to. You have no choice.
4359. What is the zip zop zippity sound you play without any context? What is the zip zop zippity sound we play?
I don't know. That's new to me.
I don't know what. I honestly don't even know what you're referencing.
Clueless.
4359, explain yourself. I don't know what zip zop zippity is. Sorry.
We'll see if we get another response.
1624, grievance. Whittingham stripping the program to virtually nothing. I was happy when he left. I know it's not a popular opinion, but I truly believe his play style held the team back. Grateful Scally is staying, but he needs coaches on the roster. Guys, one of our most loyal listeners and one of our constant feedback sources, love the text. I just can't echo what you're saying here.
Held back in what way?
Whittingham stripping the program to virtually nothing. Look, he took what he thought could make him successful at Michigan.
Yeah.
What if you were one of the people who you wanted him to leave, but the only way you're allowed to leave is by retiring? That's part of the problem that got us here.
Yeah.
Because there was an assumption with boosters or athletic directors or university, whoever was just like, Kyle, you're allowed to leave, but you're allowed to leave only on our terms. And he's like, okay, no, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And that means I'm going to coach. And that means I'm going to take Lewis Powell and I'm going to take Jason Beck and I'm going to take a couple years from you, potentially.
Yeah.
Like saying I don't want Kyle Whittingham, but I don't want anyone else to have Kyle Whittingham either. What? Yeah. You can't do it that way. Unfortunately, you can't. And if you don't want anyone else to have him, or if you expected Kyle Whittingham to take a new job and not bring anybody he knows with him, that is just pie in the sky. That is so unrealistic. I would actually love to know if that has ever happened in the history of college football. Maybe we'll do a little research. I really would love to know if any head coach has ever been hired in a new school and he only kept the old staff or he only brought people that he had not had on his previous staff. I would bet that has never one time happened in the history of college football. When Urban Meyer left, he took the whole offensive staff with him. Everybody. Kyle Whittingham ended up figuring it out. Wasn't easy, but he ended up figuring it out. That's why you hired Morgan Scalley, because you think he's going to be able to figure it out.
So far, AI says there's no definite list of college coaches doing that.
I'm going to go with my gut and say it's never one time happened. Also,
I mean, the real issue with it is who he took. It isn't about just that he did take some people with him.
Yeah.
It's who he took.
Of course.
And who he took puts a serious dent into, at this point, especially with the transfer portal and with the recruits, the high school recruits already signed, it leaves an impression of, should we stay loyal to those coaches or should we stay loyal to the program?
You know what's really crazy to me is that the fact that people are more upset over who he took than over the fact that he himself left, in my opinion, displays a sort of misunderstanding of why Utah football has been what Utah football has been.
Exactly.
It's like people are saying that Jason Beck is the only reason that you had a 10-win season, or Jim Harding is the only reason that you had a 10-win season. Kyle Whittingham was the source of all of this. When Urban Meyer left, people were upset about Urban Meyer leaving, or they were just not upset because we were from humble beginnings at that point, just like, well, you can't keep somebody like that in Utah.
Right.
Like, you should have been mad about Billy Gonzalez leaving. You should have been mad about Dan Mullen leaving. You should have been mad about a lot of those guys being gone, but you weren't, because Urban Meyer is what you attached all that success to. For some reason, people are not attaching the success to Kyle Whittingham because the familiarity has bred contempt. And I was with you after the BYU game. I was like, stop telling me about analytics. You screwed that up. Kyle Whittingham lost that game.
Yep.
His decision-making lost that game. But he also won you the other 10 games that you won. You can't blame the head coach only for the losses and give the win credit to everyone else. That's not how it works.
It almost feels like maybe the fan base is not directing all their hate towards Whittingham in that way, because he probably, that's the sentiment of him having one foot in, one foot out, probably did rub the fan base the wrong way early. And this him leaving and taking everybody with them just makes it even worse that he was 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, but look, you could be mad at Kyle Whittingham for changing his mind. You could be mad at Kyle Whittingham for admitting, by the way, in Michigan media availability, I should not have answered questions about the timeline, because we all did it. We started asking him, hey, coach, you're in your 60s now.
Yeah.
When are you going to retire? And instead of just being like, what are you talking about? He was like, oh, yeah, I probably won't stay many more years. It probably won't be that much longer. I asked him when the Miami game got announced, Utah versus Miami, right? Hey, that's 2027. Are you going to be coaching that game? He laughed and said, no, I don't think so. Now he's got a contract through 2031.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he made a huge mistake answering those questions the way that he did. But I cannot support any grievances against Kyle Whittingham for going with common practice and taking coaches that he worked with.
Yeah.
All right. This is, I think, a better directed grievance. 7889 says, thanks a lot, Sharon Moore. You really botched Scally's transition to head coach. You're dang right. If you have a grievance, it's with Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
7516, grievance with sportscasters mispronouncing names of coaches and players. Cringy. This is my biggest nightmare if I ever do it. If I ever mispronounce anything from a name standpoint, the worst. I'm sure I'm guilty of it because I talk nonstop.
Oh, I'm majorly guilty.
But, man, it is brutal. And when you're watching a live game and they can't get names right, that is triple brutal.
To steal the show for a minute, you knew Drew Timme, right, from Gonzaga?
Yeah.
How many people do you think in the whole entire world would have guessed that it was Timme and not Time?
That's how you said it? Time?
I said Time for one whole entire game. I did not know it was Timme.
It's Timme. Yeah. That's a tough one. Do you have any grievances before we take a break here?
No, not really. I don't got any grievances. But you know what? To Kyle Whittingham, good luck in Michigan. Like, I'm from the Midwest, Notre Dame fan, big fan of the Notre Dame Michigan rivalry. Maybe he can work with Marcus Freeman at University of Notre Dame and try to get that rivalry back. I would love to watch that game. Let's see what he can do in Ann Arbor. I hope he beats the Buckeyes.
I don't know if this is a grievance, but maybe it is. Harrison Taggart. You guys remember Harrison Taggart? Corner Canyon linebacker.
BYU.
Track star. Went to Oregon out of high school.
Yep.
Transferred to BYU.
Yep.
Transferred from BYU to Cal. Guess whose name is in the transfer portal today?
Harrison Taggart.
We might be talking about 4 different schools for Harrison Taggart. 1 year at Oregon, 2 years at BYU, a year at Cal, and he's got eligibility left where he could finish out wherever he wants.
Utah, Michigan. I mean, he was recruited by Utah heavily before he decided to go to Oregon.
He had 38 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss this year at Cal. He was a regularly used backup, played in 13 games for Cal.
You think there should be different rules for, like, starters should get at least 3 opportunities to transfer, and maybe backups only get 1 or 2?
No. Everybody should get 1 transfer penalty-free, and if you transfer after that, you should have to sit out a year.
Oh, you want to go back to that rule again, huh?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because free agency every year for every player is silly. It's dumb.
I agree.
Not being able to transfer at all, also dumb, in my opinion. But transferring, I mean, look, you're not supposed to play 4 years for 4 different programs at any level of sport.
No.
In Little League, you shouldn't be transferring teams every year. In high school, you shouldn't go to a different high school 4 times. In college, you shouldn't. In the pros, if you're playing for 4 teams in 4 years, it means your career's not going well.
Yeah. Speaking of which, did you see what happened with Baylor over the weekend with that NBA player that got drafted and then went back to Baylor?
Charlie Baker said you can't do this anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got 4 years of eligibility.
Well, guess what's going to happen with that? Lawsuit, eligibility gets restored. Charlie Baker has to say sorry, which sucks.
What if Brendan Covey wanted to do that? He's like, you know what? I'm tired of playing in the NFL. Let me go back to Utah.
Well, he's already used all of his eligibility. That's the problem.
Okay.
But anyone who skipped eligibility could do it.
Trevor Lawrence? That might not be a bad idea.
59-27. This will be our last grievance. Grievance, some of the stupid things Ute fans say and believe. Ute fans support the team, period. I support Morgan. All right, I like that. And a question, is Swan the new DC or is Shaw? When I Google, I get Shaw. My belief is that the defensive coordinator announcement we're going to get is Colton Swan.
You think he'll have, like, calling duties, or do you think Scally will continue calling duties?
No, I think that it'll be like when Morgan was the coordinator for a defensive-minded head coach in Kyle Whittingham, who had been a defensive coordinator. I think that Morgan will have to spend a lot more time figuring out what his offensive philosophy is, and Colton Swan has been working with him for several years now, and they are of like mind, and I think that Morgan Scally will let Colton Swan call the defense. I also think, I got to state this, it sounds like Sean Nua is like a likely replacement for Jay Hill at BYU. Sean Nua, former defensive lineman at BYU, spent some time in the NFL. He's currently, I think, on the USC staff. It is risky to have a defensive lineman and a defensive line coach be a coordinator.
Yeah, it is.
Like, there's just, and I'm not trying to say anything about Sean Nua. I've never worked with him, obviously. I've never played for him, obviously. But it is not super common that defensive linemen have a good understanding of how to confuse quarterbacks with coverages.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's why mostly former linebackers and DBs are DC coordinators.
Right.
Because they have an understanding of the coverage. D linemen, we just know one job, which is to go get the quarterback. That's it.
Offensive linemen and defensive linemen know ball around the line of scrimmage. It's why offensive line coaches end up being run game coordinators, but don't often end up being offensive coordinators.
Exactly.
Because when you're a big guy and you're getting smashed in the face every play, you don't pay attention to what's going on the perimeter.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, got to take a break here. Spence Checketts and the driver coming up. Maybe he'll be here for a little crosstalk as we close it out. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Wrapping it up here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Spence Checketts in the drive will take over. Happy New Year, Spence.
Hello. Can't hear anything. Hello. Yay. Hello. There we go. Could you hear me while I was unable to hear anything? Okay. Awkward. Yeah. Hi, Sean. Happy New Year. Have you broken any of your New Year's resolutions yet?
I'm not a resolutions type of guy because every time I set one, I know I'm going to break it.
Okay.
And so it's a self-defeating prophecy. So
okay. Smart.
Yeah.
You don't want to set yourself up for failure.
That's right.
Okay. Do you remember? You've seen the film. I call them films. It's not a big deal. Do you remember the film Goodfellas?
Yes.
Potentially the best gangster movie of all time.
Yeah, it's really great.
In the running. And in the aftermath of the Lufthansa heist, you remember the Lufthansa heist where, they stole all the cash?
Uh-huh.
And it might be my favorite scene out of any gangster movie where Martin Scorsese elected to play the piano outro of the song Layla by Derek and the Dominoes as the bodies of Stack Edwards, Maury Kessler, the idiot with the bad hair, in addition to Johnny Roast Beef and his wife, because you remember they bought the fur coat, and De Niro's like, what are you doing? We have to lay low.
Uh-huh.
So you see in this montage all of these people who have been offed. They're dead. You see their bodies. Now, this is a little morbid, but I couldn't help but think of that scene as the tweets were rolling in. It's like, oh, Jason Beck.
No,
and
they're
then
not dead.
They're not dead, but, like I said, it's a little morbid, but I'm hearing the piano outro in my head as Lewis Powell is revealed, as Jim Harding is revealed. And I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And we said this on Tuesday, man, like, Whit is your spouse who can afford a much better lawyer, and you guys sit down to mediate, and he says, guess what? I'm taking the house. I'm taking the cars. I'm taking the kids. I'm taking the vacation home. I'm taking the frequent flyer miles. I will take all of it. Thank you very much. And there's nothing you can do. And I feel bad for our guy, man. I mean, I have faith that Morgan's the right guy for this job, but it's just like Whit came in and Utah was the spouse on the other side that had hired their brother-in-law because they couldn't afford a good lawyer. And now Kyle took everything. You are done. You got nothing. The 401k, it's Kyle's. It's all his.
See, now you're bringing up a scene from the Wedding Crashers for me.
Yes, indeed. So good. You know what? Give her the miles. Oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that.
But there's none of that. There's no, let's meet you in the middle ground. Kyle came in and took it all.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, from a coaching staff standpoint, it's going to be tough to replace Lewis Powell. I think Jason Beck, yes. I think it's going to be really, really hard to replace Lewis Powell as a recruiter.
Yeah.
That's the one that scares me the most. But, I mean, here's the thing. Morgan is an easier guy to get along with than Kyle Whittingham is. Hopefully that means he can fill in a staff more easily than Kyle Whittingham. Now, maybe he's not as good at it yet. Maybe he's not as seasoned in selecting guys and things like that. Of course, he wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But I think that the reach and the options for Morgan are actually probably greater than what Kyle Whittingham normally deals with. And I'm going to be optimistic about that. The concern I have is the one that starts to take shape today with the transfer portal, with players being able to actually put their name in the transfer portal, because while I'm confident Morgan's a smart guy and he'll probably bring in the right kind of people to fill these openings, are you filling those openings with the right kind of people through the eyes of the players that you need to keep?
I heard you outline this earlier, and you're spot on. Like it's 100% correct in any sport on any level, and we've seen it play out over decades and decades and decades of evidence. I think the latest iteration of pro football was the whole Brady-Belichick argument, right? So what would the Pats look like after Brady decided to go to Tampa? Well, they were awful.
We saw that.
Yeah, we did. And now Bill Belichick is dating someone who's very legal or barely legal and is in danger of losing his job as the head coach of North Carolina. And Brady went down to Tampa, got another Super Bowl, and he's making like $350 million as an analyst at Fox. And
also dating someone who's barely legal. So
yes, indeed.
There
so
it is.
I guess everybody wins. Happy ending for everybody. Not like that. Clean it up. Okay, it's New Year's. Relax, everybody. But no, we have, like, Smitty tells this hilarious story that I remember when the Jazz were playing the Lakers in 1988, and it was like the first time the Jazz were in the playoffs is like something serious, and they took LA to 7 games. And before the game, Pat Riley was asked, like, what gives you the most confidence you're going to win tonight? And he looked at the reporter. He said, Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are on my team.
Yeah.
And John and Carl were great, but they were very young, right? And they went on to go to the finals a couple of, 6, 7, 8 years later. But any coach with any self-awareness will completely admit I am not near as well-respected as I am if I don't have the horses playing for me. So you're right. Now we have to kind of hold on for the ride and see who's coming back.
Yeah. And I put up some polls. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. If you
right.
if you can only keep one, all right? And I'm sure that there's possibilities for Utah to keep more than one in these cases, but I focused on young players, like really young guys, and I obviously left out the quarterback because you want to keep Bird Ficklin more than you want to keep anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But on the offensive side of the ball, if I tell you can only keep one, Daniel Bray, J.J. Buchanan, Celesi Moa, who you have not seen play college football yet, but is obviously highly coveted for obvious reasons, or Hunter Andrews. Who are you keeping out of the transfer portal? You remember Little League Baseball?
Mm-hmm.
They used to be able to freeze players.
Yeah, yep.
You get to freeze one guy.
Okay.
Who are you freezing?
I think I'll take Bray out of that group.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's where my gut goes. I mean, I just don't know enough about Ben's boy. I don't know enough about Celesi. He seems to have everything that you want. And at one point, I believe Ben told you that they planned on using Celesi on both sides of the ball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that kid has that type of potential, certainly at that age, but based it off of proof of concept, I think my answer is Bray. Who'd you go with?
J.J. Buchanan got the bulk of the answer, 65%. Okay. And I think that is because people trust that Utah can fill in the blanks at running back where Bray is playing. At wide receiver or pass catcher, I probably agree that J.J. Buchanan has shown things that you don't often get at Utah. So do what you can to keep that guy. Same thing, defensive side of the ball, young players, freshmen. Pupu Sepulona, who we saw on the interior D-line. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Carson Kaufusi. So Sepulona, Kaufusi, Cash Dillon. Obviously, you're probably going to be missing John Henry Daly. You need a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. Elijah Ellis, who is, of course, of the lineage.
Yeah.
Who are you freezing?
I feel like the answer might be Cash, to your point about losing John Henry Daly. But I would kind of say the same thing that you said about the offense. I mean, look, if Morgan continues to do what he and Witt have done, they're going to be able to find pass rushers. They're going to be able to find, interior defensive linemen. And I think Cash is only a freshman, right? So I think you want that kid around as long as you can. That's what my gut. What'd you say to the defensive side question?
Well, Elijah Ellis, because of the versatility, he's good enough, big enough to be a solid linebacker right now. And if you continue to pack weight on him, then he should be what Jonah was. So,
which would be awesome, of course. Yeah.
So we'll see. That one a lot closer. Pupu got 15%, Cash Dillon 24%, Elijah 33%, and Carson Kaufusi 28%.
Okay.
So a lot more variance on that one.
Whew. Well, crazy times, man. It's been a wild few weeks.
And it will continue to be until this transfer portal window closes.
Yes, indeed.
We'll be covering it all on the Sean O'Connell Show and on The Drive with Spence Checketts. Stay tuned for that on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.